If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 101. Chapter 101. Stolen. Don't let anyone ever make you feel like you don't deserve what you want. Patrick Verona, 10 Things I Hate About You. Looking at the phantom thief gracefully disappearing into the sky, the audience in the exhibition hall exclaimed in disbelief. The Hope Diamond has been stolen by the phantom thief. The entrance and exit of the hall have been closed all the time, and the windows are intact. How did he manage to get outside? What happened just now? I only saw a bunch of feathers falling from above, and then, after I rubbed my eyes, the diamond was stolen by the phantom thief. That was way too fast. It's a bit of a shame. I thought we could see a wonderful performance like the last time he reversed the rain, but I didn't expect him to steal the diamond so quickly. But the whole process of phantom thief stealing the Hope Diamond is unbelievable. I can't imagine how he did it. Magic. It must be magic. I always knew the phantom thief couldn't be just an ordinary magician. He definitely used the magic of space. Otherwise, how can someone explain everything that just happened? Everyone at the scene is either amazed by the phantom thief's almost unbelievable ability to move through space or unhappy that the phantom thief has stolen yet another valuable treasure. The audience is carefully pondering the truth behind the whole process of the crime. Only one person showed a different expression from everyone else. While most people crowded around the window to look outside at the phantom thief, Henry Orpheus stood in front of the display of the Hope Diamond. Looking at the empty glass case and transparent box inside, Henry did not show disappointment or frustration. Instead, he seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The phantom thief finally took the stone of misfortune away. The fact that he left the box behind is so stupid. It seems that the terrifying curse misfortune will soon catch up with him. In his mind, Henry pondered, the real Hope Diamond should still be locked in the safe in my office. Although I was forced to tell Batman about it that day, that crazy vigilante wouldn't steal that diamond. Besides, I checked last night, and the diamond was still there. Next, I'll pretend to chase after Phantom Thief, and then I'll bring out the real Hope Diamond, and people will think that I have taken the diamond back from Phantom Thief. Then, thinking about it, Henry's eyes couldn't help showing a look of joy. What Henry doesn't know is that, not far from him, Dick is looking at him strangely. What's wrong with his attitude? He was still crying in front of me and Barbara, saying that he put all his money into this exhibition, and no matter what, he couldn't let Hope Diamond be stolen. But now that it's really been stolen, he seems to be very happy. Isn't he crazy? Dick knew that people don't just go crazy so easily. Henry's behavior was quite strange. Could it be that he is not the real Henry but the phantom thief in disguise? Thinking of this, Dick turned his head to glance at Dean beside him. If Phantom Thief disguised himself as Henry, then who is Dean? Dick furrowed his brows tightly. As of now, both Dean and Henry are acting strangely, and both of them were very close to the display just now, and they had the opportunity to take advantage of the confusion and steal the Hope Diamond. But since they were able to pass Harvey's inspection and usually appear in the exhibition hall, it means that they are not wearing disguises. And the Phantom Thief can't split himself into two people unless he has partners? Dick looked at Henry for a while, then at Dean, whose mind was extremely conflicted. He instinctively looked up at the ceiling, and in that instant, Dick's eyes lit up. Yeah, that could work. At the same time, Jim took out his walkie-talkie and contacted Harvey, who was guarding the entrance to the exhibition hall. He opened his mouth and asked, "Harvey, did anyone enter or leave the exhibition hall just now?" Harvey took the communication and responded very confidently, "I swear on my grandmother's grave, I didn't see anyone come out of the exhibition hall, and no one went inside." After a pause, Harvey asked in turn, "Jim, what's happening? I heard a noise inside the hall. Did the Phantom Thief appear?" "He's gone now, and the Hope Diamond has been stolen." Jim spoke with a serious expression, but there was one thing that puzzled him. In just under a minute, how did the phantom thief manage to steal the diamond and escape outside? If he only took the diamond without leaving, there would still be some possibility, but to escape outside? Even more incredible is that there is a gravity sensor device below the Hope diamond. If the phantom thief had taken the diamond, it should have triggered an alarm, but that didn't happen. Jim couldn't imagine how this could be performed, perhaps only magic or superpowers could explain it. Commissioner Gordon, please send officers to chase the phantom thief quickly. We must not let him take the Hope diamond away. At this moment, Kim rushed over with an anxious expression and requested Gordon. Don't worry, we have officers placed outside the museum. They are already chasing the phantom thief. But I have a question for you, Ms. Kim. Are you sure that the diamond he had in his hand was real? Jim was looking for answers and asked. Forgive me for asking, but I can't believe that phantom thief could perform all this in such a short amount of time. Perhaps the one outside is just a dummy, and the real phantom thief and the diamond might still be here. No, I'm absolutely sure that was the real Hope diamond. Kim shook her head and said it firmly. I've worked at the Smithsonian Museum for over a decade, and I've seen it almost every day. I know the shape, color, and refracted brilliance of the diamond. Just now, the phantom thief flew right by the window. I saw the diamond in his hand up close, and there is no doubt, it was the Hope diamond. Seeing Kim so sure, Jim's expression changed immediately. He quickly brought the walkie-talkie to his mouth and switched to the GCPD's public channel. Task Force A, Task Force B, Emergency Response Team, all members of the GCPD inside the exhibition hall. This is Jim Gordon. The phantom thief has appeared and stolen the Hope diamond. He is currently escaping towards Gotham City Stadium. Everyone, immediately go and follow him. Repeat, everyone, immediately go and follow him. After giving the orders, Jim hurriedly gathered the officers who were guarding the exhibition hall to secure the entrances and exits and then started maintaining order inside the exhibition hall. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to prevent the phantom thief from using disguise to hide from the crowd, we must perform the necessary checks on all of you, including body searches. Please cooperate with the police. Now, please have everyone line up at the entrance for the inspection. After the inspection is completed, you can leave the museum as usual. Chapter 102, Chapter 102, Exposing. When life gets you down, you know what you gotta do. Just keep swimming. Dory, Finding Dory. In the exhibition hall, Jim led a team of GCPD officers to guard the doors. Harvey and his subordinates kept a close eye on the doors from the outside. This made it impossible for anyone to sneak out of the hall. A number of people lined up at the doors and went through complete inspections by Jim and his squad before being allowed to leave. Moreover, the exhibition hall is now only allowed to go out but not to enter. Anyone who wants to go in after going out the door will be considered a criminal suspect and arrested on the spot. So, have you figured out how Phantom Thief managed to steal the diamond and escape from this closed exhibition hall? Dick nudged Dean with his elbow and asked. Both of them were inside the hall and had to go through the GCPD's inspection as well. They were towards the back of the line and would have to wait a while before it was their turn. Henry was right behind them, but 4 or 5 people separated him from them. Hearing Dick's question, Dean pondered for a moment and said, I don't believe the Phantom Thief can teleport instantly. The one who flew past the window just now was definitely not the real Phantom Thief. He's surely still hiding inside the hall. Although Ms. Kim from the Smithsonian Museum insisted that the Hope diamond outside was real, it's not difficult today to create a diamond with the exact same appearance using advanced technology. Dick nodded in agreement. I think so too. The Phantom Thief probably wanted everyone to think he escaped with the diamond, leading the police to chase after a dummy so that he could blend in with the crowd and leave the exhibition hall. I just don't know how he would have passed the inspection. It's actually quite simple. Dean held up a finger and shook it. Professional magicians are experts at hiding things on their bodies. Even if Phantom Thief had the Hope Diamond, I don't think a group of cops who don't know much about magic could find it. Are you saying that if you hid something on your body, the police wouldn't be able to find it either? Dick asked suspiciously. Dean smirked and replied, "Guess so. I'm amazed by you magicians. If you all started stealing, you'd probably all be very good at it." Dick joked and then asked, "Do you think it's possible that the Phantom Thief didn't steal the diamond and the Hope Diamond is actually still on display? After all, the gravity sensors weren't triggered." Hearing this, Dean was taken aback for a moment, then his expression became serious as he replied, "I did consider that possibility. But I don't think it's very likely because we could see the box inside the glass case that held the diamond. This creates the illusion that the diamond is still inside the case while it's actually been stolen. All you need to do is cover the entire glass case with a special case that reflects the angle of light reflection, making the diamond inside disappear. However, in that case, the box inside the glass case should also disappear at the same time, or at least the form should be messed up. It wouldn't remain exactly the same as before. What we saw was that the glass case and the box inside are exactly the same as before, only the diamond is missing." Dick turned to look at the display, and as Dean said, the transparent box under the glass case looked exactly the same as before. Dean continued explaining. "The only way to create the illusion we're seeing now is by the Phantom Thief lifting the glass case and placing it directly over the transparent box. That's the only way to make the diamond disappear while leaving the box and the glass cover intact." Dick frowned and asked, "But that doesn't make sense. The transparent box containing the diamond has a gravity sensor device, so tampering with the glass cover would trigger an alarm. That's why I don't think it's possible. At least I can't figure out how he did this. Besides, if the Phantom Thief truly had a way to ignore the gravity sensor, he could have just taken the diamond directly. Why bother creating this illusion?" Dean shook his head and said, "Exactly." Dick rubbed his chin in agreement. Not long after, it was Dean and Dick's turn for inspection. Jim and his team carefully patted them down and searched through everything. Except for finding 2 handkerchiefs, a rose, 4 marker pens, several rectangular cardboard boards, 20 old coins, 3 paper cups, and 7 decks of playing cards on Dean, they didn't find anything suspicious. As a magician, it's reasonable for Dean to have these props on him. Although Jim had to pull him aside for questioning, he still passed the inspection. On the other hand, all they found on Dick were his wallet, phone, and earphones, making his inspection much quicker. "I can't believe you hid so many things on you." After waiting for a while, Dick entirely looked at Dean and admired him for a while. "That's the result of my being cooperative during the inspection. Trust me, they wouldn't have found anything if I didn't want them to." Dean gave a proud little snort. "I don't think that's anything to be proud of at all." Dick couldn't help but roll his eyes in response. After leaving the exhibition hall, the two of them went straight downstairs and left the Orpheus Jewelry Exhibition Center. "I'm sorry, I didn't help much today. I couldn't figure out Phantom Thief's methods," Dean said apologetically. "Don't worry about it, it's not a big deal. Besides, no one else can figure it out either," Dick replied calmly. "The events for today are over. Do you need me to show you the way back home?" "What nonsense are you talking about? Do you think I don't know the way to my own home?" Dean's lips twitched. "All right, just go already." After saying goodbye, Dick and Dean took their separate ways back home. When they reached a long distance, Dick took out his headphones and put them on. Then he took out his phone and tapped on it, as if he were selecting a song. As time passed, all the hundreds of people in the exhibition hall were inspected and had left the exhibition. There were no suspicious people found inside. With no other choice, Jim had no choice but to leave the exhibition hall with his team and head towards Gotham City Stadium. One of his subordinates had just reported that they were about to catch up to Phantom Thief. Whether this Phantom Thief is real or fake will be known soon enough. After some time, In the Orpheus Jewelry Exhibition Center, the East Exhibition Hall is where the Hope Diamond was stolen. A shadowy figure sneaked in quietly, and who could it be but Dean? At this moment, the exhibition hall had already closed, the lights in the hall were turned off, and it was dark. Dean had night vision glasses on his face, which let him see and move around in the dark. Dean walked up quietly to where the Hope Diamond was on display and was about to lift the glass cover. Click! Suddenly, a switch sound echoed, and then the lights in the entire exhibition hall turned on. "Sure enough, it's you, Phantom Thief!" A voice immediately followed. Looking in the direction of the voice, Robin appeared in the exhibition hall and stared at Dean with a cold gaze. "Still in disguise? It's time to take off that mask." Chapter 103, Chapter 103, Fake Dean. Why are you trying so hard to fit in when you were born to stand out? Disguise? Why would you think that? Dean paused with his hand reaching towards the glass case and turned to look at Robin, a playful smile on his face. He tightly pinched his own face but didn't rip off any kind of mask before asking the question. "Why isn't this my real face? I'm Dean Thurston, and Dean Thurston is the Phantom Thief." Dean raised both hands in a motion of complete surrender, saying, "So, how is it? How does it feel to see your best friend as the Phantom Thief? Do you want to let me go for old time's sake? Save it, Phantom Thief. In the past, I might have fallen for your tricks, but now I see through all your actions." Robin looked at Dean with confidence and a smirk on his face. "Phantom Thief, since you know my real identity, then you must have done a detailed investigation on me, and you must also know about my relationships, and disguising yourself as Dean is your best choice. Unfortunately, you got one thing wrong from the beginning, and that's the fact that Dean could never be the Phantom Thief." "Oh." Dean properly showed a surprised expression on his face. "During the incident at the Natural History Museum, Batgirl and I already confirmed Dean's identity. When you arrived at the museum, he was still at his own home. Unless Dean can split himself, you can't possibly be him." Hearing this, Dean immediately nodded in realization and said, "I see, you had suspicions about Dean Thurston being me before, and it seems you even secretly monitored him?" "Tisk tisk." Dean clicked his tongue and said, "Monitoring even your best friend, is that the way you superheroes work? Well, I could never do something like that." Robin's expression froze, then he snorted and said, "Saying all this won't change the fact of my determination to catch you. Well, even if you can be sure that Dean is not the Phantom Thief, how can you explain this face of mine?" Dean poked his own cheek and spread his hands outwards, saying, "I have gone through 2 identity verifications by the GCPD and passed both, you know. Do I look exactly like Dean Thurston? Can the world have such a coincidence? When Harvey Bullock couldn't pull off your disguise mask during the identity check, which indeed confused me, there was even a moment where I wondered if Dean might actually be the Phantom Thief." Robin crossed his arms and stared at Dean in front of him. "When I thought back to how you used feathers to distract us, I figured out how you passed the inspection." Robin showed a grey feather from somewhere and raised it slowly. "This feather is actually dyed with paint, it's not naturally grey." "So why did you dye it?" He pointed his finger at the ceiling. "Because the color of the ceiling of the exhibition hall is grey. I guess you disguised yourself as a worker here and used the opportunity to stick feathers to the ceiling using special glue that loses its stickiness after some time. This would create the illusion of countless feathers appearing in the exhibition hall out of thin air. You only gave us a date instead of a specific time because you couldn't be sure exactly when the glue would weaken, so you just estimated it. Just like now, there are still some feathers sticking to the ceiling." Dean looked up and saw some feathers still on the ceiling. "I didn't think you'd figure it out, Robin." "Impressive." Dean smiled faintly. "But what do feathers have to do with faces? Who said anything about feathers?" Robin's lips curled into a smirk. "I was talking about the glue." Dean's expression shifted slightly, and he casually said, you're very clever. Unless you and Dean are identical twins, I find it hard to believe that your appearances are so similar. Especially when both of you are skilled in magic. It's either a very small chance or a trick that was made on purpose. Robin looked determined, and his voice was loud. To prevent a disguise mask from being removed is actually very simple, and anyone can easily do it. Even though this method is so simple that it's hard to believe anyone would really do it, as Dean would say. A magician must do what others cannot. Whether it's rough or fake, as long as it achieves the desired result, it's worth doing. Robin looked at the fake Dean with admiration. Phantom thief, you used strong glue to stick Dean's disguise mask to your own face. Did you not think that you could have to rip off your skin? You've been keeping this face since the beginning, not because you didn't want to take off your disguise, but because you couldn't remove it, right? Clap, 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 clap. What an amazing deduction! All the evidence is so well connected. If I were to deny it now, I would seem rather ignorant, wouldn't I? Phantom thief applauded repeatedly and suddenly crossed his hands and forcefully pulled at the clothes on his shoulders, all in an instant. With a tearing sound, the original clothes were suddenly torn off immediately. It was replaced by an extremely elegant white suit. The phantom thief had revealed his true self. Just like before, his appearance was usual. The white style, the sharp figure, the elegant posture, the playful gaze, and the ever-mysterious glint of the monocle. I can't hold it in any more. If I keep going like this, I'll burst out laughing. Good thing, I'm good at keeping a poker face. Dean thought to himself as he changed into the phantom thief suit. I didn't expect Robin to think that I glued a disguise mask to my face. I thought he would suspect some kind of shape-shifting superpower. Well, let's just let this mistake grow even bigger. Even though the phantom thief's monocle made it hard to see his face, Robin, who had encountered him many times before, noticed some small changes. The current phantom thief seemed to have a slightly larger face than before, which didn't exceed Robin's expectations. After all, in his view, Phantom Thief was now wearing an extra layer of mask on his face. Just as I suspected, today Phantom Thief only used the identity of Dean for the entire time. It's quite different from his usual style of constantly changing identities. Maybe some reasons stopped him from changing many identities, there can't be any other explanation. Robin stared and thought to himself. Chapter 104, Chapter 104, The Wind of Victory. So, this is my life. And I want you to know that I am both happy and sad, and I'm still trying to figure out how that could be. Charlie, perks of being a wallflower. Phantom Thief. This exhibition hall has only one exit behind me, and you have nowhere to run. Robin clenched his hands and stared at the Phantom Thief with a fierce expression that showed he was ready to fight. At this time, Robin was full of fighting spirit, as if the gust of wind of victory was blowing from behind him. In the past, I've always had to chase after Phantom Thief, but this time, I finally have the upper hand. Robin excitedly thought to himself. I'm definitely going to give him a good beating. Robin, you have discovered the reason why I can pass the identity inspection and learn the truth about the feathers appearing out of thin air. But there is still one mystery you haven't solved. Facing Robin's strong fighting spirit, the Phantom Thief seemed unaware and calmly pointed out that he still had a secret to reveal. The Phantom Thief turned around and looked at the display stand with the Hope Diamond. Inside the outer glass case lay a softly glowing blue transparent box, but the diamond that should have been inside the box had already vanished without a trace. Looking at the empty display stand, Phantom Thief said slowly, the display stand for the Hope Diamond is equipped with a gravity sensor. Any slight movement will trigger the alarm. As long as the alarm goes off. Save your breath, tell me something I don't know. Robin interrupted the Phantom Thief's explanation. And why should I have to solve your mystery? I'm not a riddler. Being interrupted, Phantom Thief didn't seem bothered and continued in a calm tone, you and I both know that the real Hope Diamond is still on this display stand. Aren't you curious about how I managed to make the Hope diamond disappear without triggering the gravity sensor device or touching the glass case? Humph! What's so difficult about that? Robin said it in a disdainful tone. Don't think that just because you disguised yourself to be Dean before, I can't imagine how you did it. Let me tell you, if the real Dean was here, he would have seen through your little tricks immediately. Oh? You're so confident about him? If Dean Thurston is really as great as you say, then why did he stay away from the stage? The Phantom Thief said it with a disdainful tone. I advise you to be careful with your words and not underestimate my friend. Robin narrowed his eyes and said coldly, with your little tricks, I can figure it out even without Dean here. Let me explain it to you. There is indeed a gravity sensor on the display stand, but the range it detects is only a small circle surrounding the diamond box inside the glass case. As long as you don't touch this small circle or the diamond box, the alarm won't be triggered. In the same way, moving the top glass case won't set off the alarm. So, the method is simple. You don't need to cover the box with a tool that can change the angle of light reflection. You just need to glue the tool inside the glass case and suspend it above the diamond box without touching the display stand. This will change the reflection of light, creating the illusion that the diamond inside the box has disappeared. After finishing, Robin looked at Phantom Thief with a disdainful gaze and said, "This technique is similar to your disguise, it's something I thought of when I saw the leftover feathers on the ceiling. Robin, guess why I have been standing here chatting with you for so long?" At that moment, the Phantom Thief suddenly asked mysteriously with a playful smile. "Hey!" Robin was startled by the question. "What does it mean to keep chatting with me here? Isn't it you who wanted me to fully solve your techniques? I guess you must have thought that you set a trap for me to fall into." Phantom Thief smirked mysteriously at Robin and said, "I'll tell you a secret, I actually knew you would be sneaking me into the exhibition hall." Hearing this, Robin immediately felt uneasy. Snap! The Phantom Thief extended his right hand and snapped his fingers in front of Robin. Seeing his action, Robin's pupils shrank. He remembered that whenever the Phantom Thief snapped his fingers, something bad was about to happen. As a result, he instinctively ran toward the Phantom Thief. But then, nothing happened. At that moment, Phantom Thief had just lifted the glass case covering the display stand with both hands. Inside the glass case was another slightly smaller glass-like structure. After he revealed the two glass covers, the diamond inside the box appeared. To be precise, it was the stone of misfortune, similar in appearance to the Hope diamond. "Hey!" Realizing that nothing had changed after he snapped his fingers, Robin was stunned. Click! Just then, a pair of oddly shaped handcuffs locked onto the Phantom Thief's right wrist. "You almost fooled me, Phantom Thief." Robin grinned and fastened the other end of the handcuffs to his own wrist. "These handcuffs take even Batman 3 minutes to unlock. Now let's see where you can run." The Phantom Thief sighed and raised his unshackled left hand to look at his watch. "Well, I miscalculated the time. I was 10 seconds early, but I'm sure it's time now." The Phantom Thief muttered to himself, then suddenly stepped back from Robin, raising his hands and making a funny face at him. "You're still 20 years too young to catch me, little Robin." "What?" Seeing that the Phantom Thief had actually managed to escape from the handcuffs, Robin was shocked. He quickly looked down at the handcuffs and realized that there was another handcuff next to them. Without a doubt, the handcuffs that he put on earlier were just fake arms that Phantom Thief intentionally let him handcuff. "Phantom Thief!" Robin shouted in anger. Boom! Just as Robin was about to jump on Phantom Thief, everything suddenly went dark in the exhibition hall. The lights were out in the exhibition hall. Not only that, but even the security systems in the hall temporarily stopped working due to the sudden power outage. While there were backup power sources, it would take some time to switch over. Robin never expected that Phantom Thief had tampered with the power source, and he had been hiding all this time to perform this plan. Why didn't he cut the power earlier? Could it be that the phantom thief had already planned for Robin to see through his disguise? No, now is not the time to think about that. Phantom thief's target must be the diamond. When he stepped back from the display stand earlier, he was farther away than me. Robin's thoughts raced like lightning. Without time to activate his night vision, he quickly moved to the Hope Diamond display stand, which was just 2 steps away. Fortunately, the diamond was still inside. Puff! Suddenly, a strange sound came from Robin's hand. It seemed to be coming from the handcuffs. Oh no! Robin instantly thought of the phantom thief's fake hand from earlier. The sudden power outage caught him off guard, and he didn't even have time to activate the night vision on his mask, let alone unlock the handcuffs with a key. At this moment, the fake hand on Robin's handcuffs was releasing a highly irritating gas, which made it difficult for Robin to move. Tear gas. Chapter 105, Chapter 105, Lifted. In spite of everything you've done for them, eventually, they will hate you. Green Goblin. Cough, 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 cough. Under the effect of the irritating gas, Robin's eyes turned red, and he began coughing violently. As the last choice, Robin had to step back temporarily and use his cloak to cover his face. At the same time, he quickly unlocked the handcuffs in hopes of freeing himself from the tear gas as soon as possible. He knew that by stepping back, he was giving the phantom thief the opportunity to steal the diamond. The exhibition hall was now blacked out, which meant the gravity sensors were no longer active and the alarms wouldn't be triggered. There was nothing that could stop the phantom thief now. Damn you, phantom thief! Robin thought angrily. Robin, you really need to be more cautious when dealing with things the bad guys give you. The phantom thief's playful voice came from nearby, and Robin instinctively swung his fist to the side but didn't hit anyone. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention. At that moment, the phantom thief spoke as if he had remembered something. The diamond you thought was a fake Hope diamond earlier, is actually the real deal. Don't joke around. If that was the real Hope diamond, then why did you come back to the exhibition? And what about the diamond that's on the display stand now? Robin couldn't easily believe Phantom Thief's words, but obviously that wasn't Phantom Thief's main concern. Believe it or not, it won't be long before the GCPD catches up to that dummy. Soon, you'll know the truth. Or, you could go ask Henry Orpheus. The Phantom Thief's voice echoed from all directions. It was impossible to see or even hear Phantom Thief clearly because the effects of the tear gas hadn't completely diminished yet and Robin's cloak was still covering his face. The voice sometimes sounded close, sometimes far, sometimes on the left side, and sometimes on the right. The voice started out clear and loud, slowly weakening until it faded completely. Even though Robin didn't hear the footsteps of the Phantom Thief leaving, he knew that he was definitely no longer in the exhibition hall. After a few seconds, the effects of the tear gas completely dissipated, and Robin's senses returned to normal. Sure enough, there was no trace of Phantom Thief in the exhibition hall anymore, and the blue diamond on the display stand had disappeared along with the diamond box. Instead of immediately chasing after the Phantom Thief, Robin stayed in place and started pondering. Ask Henry Orpheus. Robin had a feeling that when Phantom Thief mentioned Henry at the end, he might have some hidden meaning. Moreover, Phantom Thief confidently said that the diamond in the dummy's hand was real, which means that the diamond in the exhibition hall was fake. Could it be that the Phantom Thief had returned to steal the fake? That is definitely impossible. Even if Phantom Thief was unpredictable, Robin couldn't imagine him doing something like using a real diamond as bait to switch it with a fake. However, Phantom Thief's attitude was so sure that it obviously left Robin with some doubts. From his words, it seemed that Henry was someone who knew the inside story. Robin couldn't help but recall some missed details from before. For example, when the diamonds were originally stored in ice, Henry insisted on using a box to contain the Hope diamond, claiming it was to seal a curse. At first glance, this behavior might seem good, but the box was not just a clear, colorless container. It was slightly blue and clear, and it had a colorful diamond inside of it in a colored box. Both the box and the diamond were of a similar blue color, making it difficult even for top gemologists to determine the real Hope diamond with just their naked eyes. Now it seems that Henry likely did this on purpose so as not to let people discover that the Hope diamond on the display stand was a fake. Not long ago, when everyone was still in the exhibition hall, Robin had suspicions about Dean and also noticed that Henry was acting strangely. He didn't seem concerned about the diamond theft. In fact, he seemed somewhat happy about it. This made Robin hesitate between Dean and Henry, wondering which one was the fake disguised to be the phantom thief. But no matter who the phantom thief disguised himself as, he would eventually return to this exhibition hall, so Robin just needed to wait for him here and catch him. But now, the situation seemed a bit more complicated. Dean was indeed the fake disguise of the phantom thief, and Henry wasn't as innocent as he appeared. I guess I have to go talk to Henry Orpheus now. With a determined look, Robin thought to himself. While the phantom thief and Robin confronted each other in the exhibition hall on the street near Gotham Knight Stadium. At the top of an abandoned building that was about to be destroyed, a white glider descended rapidly. At the same time, a beam of searchlight came down from the sky, directly shining on the white glider. Several police cars followed closely behind and parked at the entrance of the abandoned building. Police officers rushed out of their cars and ran furiously towards the rooftop. Calling the chief, "This is helicopter number 2. We've located Phantom Thief's position, and the target has temporarily stopped moving." The helicopter pilot reported to Commissioner Gordon first. "Report the exact location of the Phantom Thief immediately and watch him closely." Commissioner Gordon received the report as he was a few blocks behind due to a late departure. He urged Harvey, who was driving, to hurry to the building. In Commissioner Gordon's police car, besides him and his old partner Harvey Bullock, there was a mature woman seated in the back. It was Miss Kim Beckett from the Smithsonian Museum who requested to go with Jim and Havy, as she wanted to see if the real Hope diamond was found. After a while, Jim and his team successfully arrived at the abandoned building, and the officers who had arrived early had already sealed off the scene. "Where is the Phantom Thief? Did we recover the diamond?" As soon as they got out of the car, Jim hurriedly approached one of the officers at the scene and asked. Hearing this, the officers looked at each other strangely and said, "The diamond should have been recovered, but..." "But what?" "Sir, the Phantom Thief isn't here. From the beginning, we were chasing a dummy, not the real Phantom Thief." It was a dummy. Jim felt like he had been struck by lightning. He remembered that he had suspected the Phantom Thief outside was a fake, so why did he bring all his subordinates to chase after him? "Sir, this is the diamond we recovered and a message from Phantom Thief." One officer brought out 2 sealed bags. One contained the stunning Hope diamond, while the other held a message card from Phantom Thief Kid. Jim handed the diamond to Kim for careful appraisal while he read the message card himself. A beautiful diamond named Hope, yet cursed with the misfortune, causing people to fear and preventing them from truly appreciating its beauty. "This is truly regrettable. So, I've lifted the terrifying curse that has trapped this diamond for centuries. Yours sincerely, Phantom Thief." Lifted, the curse. After reading the information on the message card, Jim was filled with question marks in his mind. What does this mean? Did the Phantom Thief steal the Hope diamond to lift its curse? Whether Jim ever believed in any curse on the diamond or not, even if there was one, he didn't believe the Phantom Thief would come especially to remove the curse from the diamond. In any case, Jim was completely puzzled and confused. But this was Gotham after all, and not understanding the motives behind crimes was too normal. Chapter 106, Chapter 106, Mission accomplished. Obsession is going to beat talent every time. You got all the talent in the world, but are you obsessed? Let's face it. It's you against you out there. When you walk on that court, you have to think, I am the best guy out there. So let me ask you again. Do you love this game? Stanley Burin, hustle. Never mind, these details don't matter. Since the phantom thief here is a dummy, the diamond must be fake too, and this message card is probably just a trick to fool the police. That's what Jim thought. Just then, Kim approached him with a grateful expression on her face and said, "Commissioner Gordon, thank you so much. You were able to get the Hope Diamond back from the phantom thief. I can't imagine what would have happened if it wasn't for you." Looking at the excitement on Kim's face, Jim found himself confused. "Wait a minute, Ms. Kim, are you saying that this Hope Diamond is the real deal? How could this be? How could it possibly be real? If Phantom Thief had put the real Hope Diamond on the dummy to attract the attention of the police, then where did the real Phantom Thief go? Why would he do this? More importantly, if the diamond in front of them is real, does that mean that earlier in the exhibition, the Phantom Thief stole the diamond that was separated by 2 layers of containers in less than a minute, escaped outside the exhibition hall, and even had time to put the diamond on the dummy? Is that something a human can do? Could the Phantom Thief really be a magician? Well, there's no doubt that this is the Hope Diamond. Didn't I confirm it when I was at the window earlier?" Kim didn't notice the confusion in Jim's eyes and nodded. With the confirmation, even though he couldn't believe it, Gordon had no choice but to trust it. In addition to the message card and the diamond, the GCPD also confiscated a glider and the dummy this time. While these weren't high-tech items, they were things used by the Phantom Thief and had considerable research value. "Ms. Kim, let's return the Hope Diamond to the exhibition hall first," Jim proposed, and Kim agreed, because they both wanted to get the diamond back to a safe place as soon as possible. They reached an agreement. After leaving a small team to continue investigating the scene, Jim and the others led more than 10 police cars to return the Hope Diamond. "I've got bad news for you. I'm not in a very good mood today, so you better spill all the information you know quickly." Inside the office of the Orpheus Jewelry Exhibition Hall Center, Robin pressed Henry onto the desk with a fierce and threatening expression. One hand firmly pressed down on his shoulder while the other twisted the director's wrist. With just a slight twist, a strong sense of pain rushed from Henry's arm, making him cry out in pain. Just a little while ago, Henry hoped to be a hero who would get the Hope Diamond from the Phantom Thief. However, after searching his office for a long time and emptying the items in the safe, he couldn't find the exact spot of the diamond. "This is getting strange. Normally, no one else should know." The Penguins gang only asked Henry to swap the diamond, they wouldn't care about what happens to the Hope Diamond. "Wait, there seems to be someone else who knows that the Hope Diamond is here." Henry quickly remembered the only person who knew about it, the person he believed would never do something so shameful. Batman. Just as Henry was angry that Batman would steal the diamonds, feeling guilty for betraying the trust of the citizens of Gotham. Without saying a word, Robin kicked open the office door and pushed Henry up against the desk. "Wow, as soon as the master steals the diamonds, the sidekick comes to beat him up. Is there no justice left? Are there no laws anymore?" At this moment, Henry felt frustrated. But Robin didn't care if he was frustrated or not and directly asked him. "I'm asking you, what exactly is the Hope Diamond that was on display at the exhibition these days? Why did you switch the Hope Diamond?" Hearing the question, Henry was instantly enraged. Unfortunately, Henry couldn't express his anger right now, so he forcibly smiled and spoke gently. Robin, is there perhaps a misunderstanding between us? I've already told Batman everything I needed to say. I swear, I didn't hide anything. Didn't Batman tell you?" "Batman?" Robin stared at Henry with a doubtful gaze. "If you had come up with a better excuse, I might have believed you. But you're saying that you've seen Batman and even shared information with him? Who are you trying to fool?" "I'm telling the truth, I encountered Batman when I was on my way home 2 days ago." Henry panicked and quickly told the story of the incident where Batman threatened him while hanging on the roof. "Batman? Penguin's Gang. The Stone of Misfortune. Hope Blue Diamond. After listening to Henry's account, Robin's eyes flickered. So, that's what happened. Diamond District, Thurston Manor. After going through different boring counter-surveillance techniques, Dean finally managed to return home in peace. The first try at disguising myself, and the results are quite impressive. As he thought about it, Dean made his way to the basement. Now he had to do something extremely important. Dean carefully took out a box from his pocket and placed it on the table. Inside was the Stone of Misfortune that Penguin had used to curse him. Despite having the system, which made Dean not particularly afraid of curses and bad luck, just to be safe, he decided not to open the box for now. He mentally called the system and calculated the results of his operation. Congratulations, host, for completing the custom mission stealing the Stone of Misfortune. Mission difficulty, difficult. Treasure value, excellent, a crystal that holds mysterious cursed power, causing misfortune to anyone who comes into close contact with it. Elegance level, B. Overall evaluation, A. High difficulty and treasure value raised the overall score. Rewards, 1,200 amazement points, from the audience in the exhibition hall, GCPD Police, Jim Gordon, Robin, plus 1,800 amazement points, given for completing the mission. Account balance, 2,600 points, a total of 5,600 points. After buying the superhuman reflex talent, Dean originally had over 2,900 points left. But later, he buys it for some highly useful gadgets, like a mini bug device, which costs over 300 points. This left him with only 2,600 points. Just after the mission was settled and rewards were given, the system's notification continued ringing in Dean's ears. Detecting an unknown sea-level curse source that may pose a deadly threat to the host. Detecting a seal that can effectively resist the curse source. Curse source analysis is in progress. Sealing object analysis is in progress. Analysis is complete. You can choose to let the system absorb the seal. After successful absorption, an invisible shield that resists all similar curse source attacks will automatically activate around the host. Special note, it can only resist the same type of curse and can only protect against the sea-level curse level. Its effectiveness against higher-level curses is slightly weaker. Chapter 107, Chapter 107, Hard Cutter. Don't be sorry, be better. Kratos, God of War. Hearing the system's prompt, Dean's face lit up with joy. The system indeed had a way of making him immune to curses. Although it could only protect him against the same type of curse that attracted misfortune and only completely resist curses of sea level, this is still highly valuable to Dean. First of all, the system automatically started the analysis without deducting any points, and the next explanations did not mention that absorbing the sealing object required points. In other words, Dean basically got a true passive magic immunity for free. Moreover, the threat of sea-level curses was important. They would primarily result in the deaths of regular people, and even some superheroes with weak fates would probably die as a result of this. At this moment, the system's prompt sounded in Dean's ear. Do you wish to activate the absorption function? Did that even need asking? Without hesitation, Dean pressed the confirmation button. Suddenly, the box containing the Stone of Misfortune on his desk emitted a burst of light. Then, the entire box started to disintegrate, turning into countless tiny pieces and disappearing into thin air. Absorption complete, constructing a curse-resistant shield. Construction complete. Although it was called a shield, it was not visible or tangible. After the construction was complete, Dean didn't feel any different than usual. On the desk, since the box used for sealing curses had been absorbed by the system, the Stone of Misfortune was now lying on it. Dean reached out and picked up the Stone of Misfortune. As his fingertips touched its surface, he felt a sudden chill. This feeling was quick, like shivering when entering a cold storage room after being outside in the hot weather. That was the so-called curse just now. Dean muttered quietly, it doesn't seem that strange. Did the shield activate? After waiting for a while, nothing happened. The curse should have been eliminated. I wonder where Penguin got this thing. Dean lightly shook the stone of misfortune in his hand and then held it firmly. I still have 5,600 points, I can buy them for that thing. System, open the store. The store interface appeared in front of Dean. He quickly swiped through the interface and found the item he wanted, then clicked purchase. Exchange for hard cutter. Hard cutter can easily cut on the surface of an object, but only on object made of ordinary matter in the universe. The thickness of the object must be less than 15 centimeters, and it does not work on living beings. Price, 4,500 wonder points. The appearance of the hard cutter was similar to a glass cutter seen in movies, but the flaw was that it was not very small and required manual operation. The benefit of this item is its extraordinary sharpness. It can cut through anything, like it's cutting through paper, except for a few special and mysterious super metals with unique properties and mysterious abilities. It can cut through almost anything without making any sound. Dean was astounded at how much this item cost the first time he saw it. Even if he could afford it, he would prioritize other buying items. But as he went on more missions, Dean started to believe that this hard cutter was an important tool for him. Just think about how many extraordinary super materials there are in this world. There are materials like glass that are harder than diamonds. Dean would be helpless if these materials were used to make containers to protect treasures or could be completely closed. Dean considered that he would definitely have to leave Gotham in the future to grow himself. Facing different monsters and creatures of the DC world, there would always be security devices, even if they seemed ridiculous. Compared to those, bulletproof glass is just worthless. At that time, what would Dean do with those devices? They would probably just seal the treasures inside and not do anything without even needing security. Dean wouldn't be able to take anything out and would just stand there empty-handed. Just in recent crimes alone, Dean didn't have any useful tools to deal with high-strength glass cases. He had to create the fake impression that the treasure had been stolen and come back for the real one after distracting everyone's attention. This plan had a good success rate, but it was ultimately just a trick. It might work a few times, but after a while, it would take a lot of work to get the ideal effect. In fact, in this recent incident, Jim has already started suspecting that the phantom thief he saw outside was a fake. It would be hard to deceive him again in the future. This means that Dean must have a way to break through high-strength protective covers under normal circumstances. He might not need to use it often, but he must have it. Currently, the best option is this hard cutter. With the hard cutter, Dean can ignore most of the protective materials in the universe. In the future, even if Phantom Thief committed crimes on other planets, this tool would prove useful. It can be predicted that the hard cutter will remain valuable for a long time in the future. On the other hand, the most useful mini-surveillance system jammer becomes useless once it leaves Earth. In short, although it was expensive at 4,500 points, it was actually worth its value. Remember that similar weapons with similar descriptions, such as guns, can penetrate any normal material armor. That would cost at least 7,000 to 8,000 points. This also made Dean realize that buying items with offensive stuff in the system seemed to be much more expensive than other items. Confirm exchange. Yes, confirmed. 4,500 points were deducted, leaving a remaining balance of 1,100 points. Dean checked his personal panel. Name, Dean Thurston. Age, 16 years old. Skills, proficiency in magic, proficiency in vehicles, proficiency in lockpicking, proficiency in shooting, proficiency in hand-to-hand combat, quick disguise, voice alteration without props. Items, card gun, grappling gun, triangular glide, bulletproof cloak, high-speed self-filling dummy, homemade smoke bomb, homemade flashbang, homemade tear gas, homemade hypnotic gas, mini surveillance system jammer, Stone of Misfortune, Hard Cutter. Talents: Resistant Skin, Low Level, Superhuman Reflexes, Mid Level, Curse Resistance Shield, Sea Level. When Dean saw the Stone of Misfortune added to his inventory, he was slightly taken aback. After a moment, he realized that he had an idea of what to do with this mysterious stone, so the system considered it to belong to Dean. "Well, how should I deal with you, little thing?" Dean lowered his head and looked at the Stone of Misfortune in his hand, squinting his eyes slightly. "Should I give it back to Penguin and let him experience the consequences of bad luck? Or should I just consider it my first collection?" Chapter 108, Chapter 108, Urban Legend. The Eyes Chico, They Never Lie. Tony Montana, Scarface. This is Gotham Channel 7, and I'm your host, Reese White. I'm here to bring you some news. Recently, Phantom Thief revealed that he would steal the Hope Diamond. This event has sparked heated discussions among the people of Gotham. Yesterday was the day of Phantom Thief's crime, and we believe that our audience is curious about the result. According to sources from the Orpheus Jewelry Exhibition Center, the police successfully stopped the Phantom Thief during his escape, and the Hope Diamond was recovered. Although Phantom Thief managed to get away, this is the first time the Gotham police have recovered stolen property from him, rather than Phantom Thief returning it himself. So, did Phantom Thief fail for the first time, as people imagine? An anonymous informant told us that the Phantom Thief did not plan to take the Hope Diamond from the beginning. Instead, his real intention was to break the long-standing curse on the diamond. The person stopped by the police was also not the real Phantom Thief, but only a dummy intentionally left behind by him. As for whether the curse is a real legend or just a marketing scheme, we cannot be sure. The credibility of this anonymous tip is uncertain, and the Gotham police have not provided any information in the matter. The truth remains uncertain, and it's up to you. At Gotham Academy, Dean was bored, so he sat at his desk and watched a news show on his phone. He watched the news because there weren't many people in the classroom, and there was still a lot of time before class. First of all, the anonymous person was not Dean, and he did not know who provided information to the media. It could have been the media paying off a cop who was there, or it might have been someone else. Whoever it was, it doesn't really matter. It's not a bad thing anyway. In the last news, a few days ago, in a certain neighborhood in Gotham's Upper West Side, there were several bizarre murder cases. The victims' corpses were terrifyingly drained of blood, as if they were drained by the legendary vampire. There were also many witnesses who claimed to have seen a giant bat at night, which is believed to be the culprit in the case. The witnesses insist that it was not Batman but a real bat-like monster. However, except for eyewitness testimony, there is currently no related video or image to confirm the existence of this bat monster. The GCPD Upper West Side Division's response to this case is that there's no such thing as a bat monster in the world, and no one has died from being drained of blood by a bat monster. Commissioner James Gordon is investigating the case currently, and he hopes to catch the real culprit soon. Thank you for watching today's program. Before the host's closing statement was finished, Dean swiped his phone to exit the video. A giant bat monster that killed several people. So there's an extraordinary creature like this in Gotham? I thought Poison Ivy and Killer Croc were typical villains of Gotham. After hearing the last news, Dean thought to himself. Since Dean does not know much about the DC world, he naturally believes in any urban legend type information. After all, Batman was also a legend before he became famous to everyone. Back when Dean had just started middle school, the urban legend of the sewer crocodile was quite popular in Gotham, but not many people believed it was true. The whole school made jokes and laughed about the sewer crocodile, but Dean was the only one who took it seriously. During that time, he made a decision to avoid sewer grates when walking. But then something happened. The sewer crocodile actually appeared. It was a notorious supervillain known as the Killer Croc, who looked like a humanoid crocodile. It was a rumor that he was suffering from atavism. Batman and Robin defeated Killer Croc, and at the time, Robin was still just a kid. After Killer Croc was imprisoned, the people who used to make fun of the sewer crocodile stopped mentioning him. Dean suspected that this time it could be a similar situation. As time passed, more and more people crowded into the classroom. "Hey, Dean!" At that moment, Dick walked into the classroom, carrying his backpack, and greeted Dean with a tired voice. Dean couldn't help but be surprised when he saw Dick's tired face with heavy dark circles under his eyes. He seemed exhausted and a little shaky on his feet. "Oh, man! What happened to you yesterday?" Dean asked. Seeing Dick in this state, Dean couldn't help but answer. "I was going to ask you the same thing," Dick replied grumpily. "We agreed to go to the exhibition together yesterday to expose Phantom Thief's tricks. So, where were you? What are you talking about?" Dean asked in confusion. "Didn't you call me early yesterday and say that Lily found the bug I planted on her and told me not to come because it might be dangerous?" "What?" Dick suddenly became more alert. He instinctively questioned, "When did I tell you that? Did you lose your memory or something?" Dean tapped his phone a few times and showed the records to Dick. "The call was from my number at 8:37 a.m. This is indeed my number, but I remember I didn't make any calls during that time." Dick looked at the call records on Dean's phone and immediately pulled out his own phone to check his call history. He found the same 8:37 a.m. time, which should have shown no call records, and now had a record. Dick made a call from his phone that he didn't actually make, and at that moment, he understood what was going on. Darn it! Phantom Thief! Dick's anger burned inside him as he clenched his fists unconsciously. After that, Dean's voice came out like a bucket of cold water pouring down. "Hey, hey, hey! Dick! What are you doing? You're going to break your phone if you keep squeezing it so hard." Dick snapped back to reality and quickly stopped squeezing. By now, his phone screen had cracks all over it, which broke Dick's heart. While others might think that being Wayne means endless fun and unlimited pocket money, only Dick truly understood how careful Bruce could be with money. He has to do chores as arranged by Alfred to earn $100 of allowance per week. Dick had so many girlfriends to go on dates with, and that little money is just not enough. Dick has to pay for the majority of his daily expenses on his own through part-time jobs, aside from the various tools and transportation that Robin requires. Looking at Dick's expression, Dean couldn't help but burst into laughter inside. Since he dared to disguise himself, he must find his thoughts on the idea that Dean really wants to impersonate Dean. He can't let Dean have a reason to appear at the exhibition. Taking Dick's phone without him noticing was a piece of cake for Dean. He even managed to crack Dick's phone password in just a minute and a half. To avoid Dick's curiosity leading him to check the call logs, Dean even made a call to himself using their voices and phones separately. Chapter 109, Chapter 109, is back. The greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. Christian, Moulin Rouge. Gotham, Diamond District, Iceberg Lounge. Penguin and Ignatius watched the news on television together. "Do we know for sure that the Phantom Thief has the Stone of Misfortune?" Penguin asked. "Don't worry, boss. Our people have confirmed that the Phantom Thief took the Stone of Misfortune," Ignatius replied confidently. "That's for sure. So, is Phantom Thief cursed this time?" According to Calculator and Felix's information, if the Phantom Thief touches the Stone of Misfortune, he won't survive. Unless... Ignatius hesitated. Unless... Penguin narrowed his eyes. Unless the Phantom Thief avoids touching the Stone of Misfortune or he knows some magic that can protect him from its curse, otherwise, the Stone of Misfortune would likely have a powerful effect on him. Ignatius said this seriously. "While we can't rule out these possibilities, considering the Phantom Thief's abilities and his routine of returning stolen items, I think the chances are very slim." Penguin murmured in agreement and continued. "Ignatius, there's something I can't figure out. Upon hearing this, Ignatius immediately focused his attention. According to the information we've gathered, the Phantom Thief's entire crime process involved using a dummy with a glider to distract everyone's attention. He returned to steal the Stone of Misfortune once the threat was gone. The diamond he used as bait was actually the real Hope Diamond. Penguin explained slowly, except for a very few of us, no one in the outside world knows about the Stone of Misfortune's existence. From the beginning, the Hope Diamond displayed at the exhibition was actually the Stone of Misfortune, while the real Hope Diamond was hidden by Henry Orpheus. I'm curious, where did the Phantom Thief get the real Hope Diamond? Since he already had the real diamond and knew the Hope Diamond on display was fake, why did he go back to take the Stone of Misfortune? Penguin looked deeply at Ignatius and asked, Ignatius, can you explain this to me? Ignatius's expression changed, as he also had the same doubts as Penguin. Apart from Ignatius and Penguin, along with a few trusted individuals, the only person who knew the complete story of the Stone of Misfortune was Henry Orpheus. Furthermore, the details of where the Hope Diamond was hidden were known only to Henry himself, as Ignatius didn't care about the Hope Blue Diamond at all. Unfortunately, the Phantom Thief's crime happened last night, and since his crime was over, Henry went with Commissioner Gordon and the others to the GCPD for questioning and hasn't come out yet. Ignatius didn't have a good opportunity to send someone to find out the whole details from Henry. In fact, he only learned from the news that aside from the Stone of Misfortune, the Phantom Thief had also stolen the genuine Hope Blue Diamond. If the Phantom Thief somehow knew that the true Hope Diamond was with Henry and then stole it, why did he need to go back and get the Stone of Misfortune? But in the end, the Stone of Misfortune was stolen. Why did the Phantom Thief do this? Does he know the real story of the Stone of Misfortune? If he did, then the Phantom Thief wouldn't willingly touch that stone. The plan to use the Stone of Misfortune to take down the Phantom Thief has undoubtedly failed. Thinking about this, Ignatius's forehead started to bead with multiple tiny sweat droplets. Well, Phantom Thief might have. Faced with Penguin's question, Ignatius struggled to find the right words. The Phantom Thief might have learned about the existence of the Stone of Misfortune through something or someone, so he intentionally took it while leaving the Hope Diamond. This would mean that he's telling us he's seen through our plan. Penguin sneered and answered his own question. More accurately, he saw through your plan. I wasted $15 million buying that worthless stone. I'm sorry, boss, I was so stupid. Ignatius lowered his head, looking panicked. The Phantom Thief usually returns the stolen items to their original places. Have you ever thought about what would happen if he secretly returned that cursed stone here? You and I would both end up dying in that damn misfortune. Penguin's voice suddenly grew louder. Ignatius, your failure this time has greatly disappointed me. Ignatius widened his eyes, and his heart started beating faster in his chest. Does this old penguin intend to kill me out of anger? Are you afraid that I'll kill you? Suddenly, Penguin's tone softened. I made a serious mistake this time. It's only right for the boss to punish me, and I'm willing to accept it. Ignatius's expression turned serious as he raised his head, his face showing a martyr's expression. If this was in Gotham over a decade ago, when Falcone was still around, I might have killed you, but now. Penguin said it with a disdainful look in his eyes. He only said half of his sentence, but Ignatius understood what he meant. You're a rare talent, Ignatius. Not just because of your personal skills, but also because I see shadows of my former self in you. I won't hold your mistake against you this time, but I won't tolerate another one. With that, the Penguin gave orders. Phantom Thief has the Stone of Misfortune. He could seek revenge at any moment. Now, I'm going to talk to Calculator. You better spend this time thinking about how to deal with the Phantom Thief. When I return, I want to hear your answer. Gotham Academy. On this day of school, Dick's mind was quite blurry as he sat in his seat, not knowing what he was thinking. Because he was daydreaming during class too many times, several teachers called his name and made him stand as punishment. If it wasn't for Dean in front of him reminding Dick, he might not even realize he was being called. It's not hard to understand, after all, for Dick, Phantom Thief had not only disguised himself to deceive Dean but had also disguised himself as Dean to deceive him. This means that Phantom Thief can use similar disguises in the future. Dick worried that if Phantom Thief were to use this scheme often, it would be a big problem to figure out Phantom Thief's real identity. Lost in these thoughts, the school day slowly came to an end. Dick dragged himself back to Wayne Manor, exhausted both mentally and physically. As soon as he entered, he was shocked to see someone other than Alfred at home. Chapter 110, Chapter 110, Cold. Every man dies, not every man really lives. William Wallace, Braveheart. Bruce. Seeing the man, Dick immediately exclaimed his name in surprise. On the couch sat a muscular man with his upper body bare, covered in countless scars. Just looking at him was enough to send shivers down one's spine. This man's name was Bruce Wayne, a billionaire who controlled massive wealth. He was also a vigilante who worked in the dark, and he was also the source of fear for criminals in Gotham. He was Batman. Bruce had several fresh wounds on his body, showing that he had been injured no more than 3 days ago, with traces of blood still coming out. At this moment, Alfred was carefully cleaning Bruce's injuries and bandaging them. Next to the couch lay a pile of blood-soaked bandages, obviously removed from Bruce's body not long ago. Alfred's face was filled with concern and helplessness. He seemed to have countless words of advice to say, but ultimately, he didn't say anything. His method of treating wounds was quite skilled. He quickly applied the ointment and wrapped a new bandage around it. "When did you come back?" Dick walked to the front of the couch and asked Bruce with concern, "These injuries look quite serious. How do you feel?" "As a mere mortal fighting alongside gods and even leading them, I know how difficult it can be, Bruce. You better rest properly at home for a few." "Dick." Suddenly, Bruce's voice was calm and didn't show any changes in his reactions. "Alfred mentioned that there's been a criminal calling himself Phantom Thief active in Gotham recently, and you've been failing to capture him every time." At his words, Dick's face froze, and he couldn't help but show a bitter smile. "I knew you would ask about this." Dick nodded and admitted, "Yes, Phantom Thief is very clever. Every time I'm close to figuring out his plan, I end up falling into his trap." "So, in these months that Phantom Thief has been active, how far have you progressed in your investigation?" Bruce continued to ask. "What is Phantom Thief's real name?" Dick fell into silence. "Phantom Thief's age? I don't know." "What is the Phantom Thief's motive for committing crimes? Appearance? Personality? Residence? Suspects?" Faced with Dick's lack of information, Bruce's voice started to get louder. "What have you been doing these past few months? Do you know how many crimes happen in this city every night? Do you know how many innocent people desperately need your help while you waste your time catching a petty thief? When I left, I had a lot of faith in you and thought you would keep Gotham safe. But your response is that you can't even handle a thief? You even let a thief become a star in Gotham? Is this what you've accomplished?" Bruce asked coldly. "Master Bruce." Alfred, who was beside him, couldn't bear to watch any longer and spoke up, "Don't be too harsh on Master Richard, he's been doing a good job. Moreover, there's something you're not aware of. The appearance of the Phantom Thief has actually led to a drop in Gotham's overall crime rate. In some ways, his existence might be a good thing." "Alfred, are you saying that the appearance of a criminal can make the city better? I cannot believe you would say such nonsense." Bruce's face showed obvious disbelief. "I'd rather believe it's the work of the GCPD. The Phantom Thief is not as simple as you think." Dick frowned and raised his voice to respond. Bruce's asking words didn't overpower Dick but instead made him want to talk back. The Phantom Thief is skilled in disguise and staged magic. He can change his voice without using any props or technology and is proficient in using a gun that shoots playing cards. He can also make his own flashbangs, smoke bombs, tear gas, and other non-lethal weapons. He is very good at preparing a row of tight operation plans and has strong anti-investigation capabilities. Bruce, you haven't seen the Phantom Thief himself, so you may not know how impressive his disguises are. Believe me, they're definitely not worse than Clayface. Dick looked serious. I have tried to track down the Phantom Thief, searching through all the surveillance footage in Gotham. At first, I was able to catch glimpses of him, but do you know what happened in the end? Every time, I lose his trail halfway through. He intentionally goes to places with fewer cameras and more people, then disappears. He can change disguises multiple times in the blink of an eye. There's no way to know who he is after he changes, and even if I do find someone who matches the disguise, they always turn out not to be Phantom Thief. Phantom Thief has never used his real appearance or voice. He has never left any clues at the scene: no fingerprints, no blood, no hair, no skin, nothing. I even examined the Phantom Thief's cloak I took, but it didn't give me any useful information. I also targeted several suspects who were most likely Phantom Thief, using surveillance, wiretapping, and even home searches. I used every available method, but in the end, none of them turned out to be Phantom Thief. Bruce, the Phantom Thief hasn't killed anyone or carried out any terrorist attacks. He doesn't possess any extraordinary powers. Maybe in your eyes, he's just a petty thief who enjoys doing with performance art. Dick said it with a serious expression. But you haven't seen the impact of his presence on this city. I firmly believe that he is a person with good intentions. Yes, Phantom Thief's actions are wrong, and they may lead others to imitate him, but that's exactly why we should take Phantom Thief seriously. He is definitely a tough opponent. My hope is to make him a part of us, not just to catch him. Hearing Dick's words, Bruce gave him a casual glance and then said, "Have you seen the news about the Bat Monster appearing on the Upper West Side?" "I know about it. It seems like a case that Barbara is investigating." Dick paused upon hearing this and continued, "Barbara was attacked last night, and she's currently lying in the hospital at Gotham General Hospital." Bruce remained expressionless as he spoke. "While you were focused on Phantom Thief, she was fighting alone against that Bat Monster." After saying that, Bruce stood up from the couch and walked towards the door without looking back. "Come to the Batcave, Dick. Tonight, there's only one thing you need to do: follow orders." Leaving Alfred and Dick alone in the room. Chapter 111, Chapter 111, Guilt. It's not always possible to do what we want to do, but it's important to believe in something before you actually do it. Might Guy, Naruto. What? Dick was shocked and quickly turned to Alfred. I didn't know about this. How is Barbara now? Why didn't she ask for my help?" Looking at Dick's guilty expression, Alfred spoke softly. "Master Richard, we only found out about this recently as well. Barbara was attacked by the Bat Monster last night. She just regained consciousness today and called Wayne Manor to explain the situation. Luckily, the injuries weren't too serious. Commissioner Gordon requested that the media not report this incident because if even the police commissioner's own daughter can't protect herself, it would cause a huge panic and make other people feel very unsafe." Alfred sighed and continued, "He must be feeling terrible, but for the sake of maintaining the city's stability, Commissioner Gordon had to hide what happened to Barbara. So, is Bruce actually blaming me for not helping Barbara in time?" Dick lowered his head, his expression complicated. Seeing Dick's expression, Alfred knew what he was thinking and patted his shoulder. "It's more likely that he is blaming himself for not coming back sooner." Alfred said softly, "Don't be too hard on Master Bruce. What he told you might not be how he really feels. He just doesn't know how to express his feelings." "I know, Alfred. I've always known. But Bruce isn't entirely wrong. Dick nodded, and his gaze became determined. Lately, I've been too focused on Phantom Thief and ignored other potential threats that could be more dangerous. Barbara actually told me before that she was going to investigate the Bat Monster murder case. At that time, the least I should have done was to investigate with her or at least provide her with some assistance. But I was completely focused on Phantom Thief and never even considered the real possibility of a Bat Monster's existence. Although I know that Phantom Thief wouldn't harm others, even if he stole something, he would also return it. The actual threat he causes is less than that of regular robbers in the streets. I should have prioritized him lower on the list. Dick shook his head with a wry smile. No one has all the answers. There are countless things you can't predict. In the beginning, no one would believe the Bat Monster was real, including me. Don't blame yourself, Master Richard, and Barbara won't blame you either. Alfred's voice remained gentle. All right, now you should go to the Batcave. Don't keep Master Bruce waiting too long. I hope you can find that Bat Monster and give it a good beating. Thank you, Alfred. Your words always manage to improve my mood. Dick smiled as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He turned and walked out of the room, heading towards the secret passage from Wayne Manor to the Batcave. After descending into the Batcave, Dick saw Bruce watching some video on the Bat computer while he was sitting in front of it. He was already suited up in his Batman suit, except for his helmet. You're too late. One of the worst things about being a soldier is being late. Bruce's gaze remained fixed on the monitor as he spoke without looking back. Dick was already used to Bruce's attitude and didn't take it to heart. But the emotional tone in the question from earlier was a bit unusual for Bruce, making Dick feel a bit uncomfortable. He approached the Bat computer without saying a word and saw on the screen a huge bat-like monster that stood over 2 meters tall, with wings stretching out to almost 4 meters in length. The monster had legs that were somewhat similar to a human's, except that the feet had turned into claws. It even wore pants, although they were old and ripped apart. Its hands and stomach were also quite human-like, but between the arms and the flank of the body were huge bat wings. Its hands had turned as sharp as claws, similar to its feet. As for the head, like its wings, it was the most bat-like part of its body, as if the bat's head were enlarged to be as big as a human's head. Rather than calling it a humanoid bat monster, it seemed more accurate to describe it as a man-bat monster. So, this is the bat monster that hurt Barbara. Barbara sent me this footage. Bruce's tone was calm. Dick looked at the monster in the footage with a strange expression. Why do I feel like this monster looks too oddly human? Perhaps, it is a human. Bruce replied with a meaningful gaze as he continued to stare at the footage. Meanwhile, at Gotham City Public Library, Dean didn't immediately go home after school. Instead, he made his way to the library. It wasn't because he needed a new topic for his crime notices. After all, Dean had just completed a successful crime of a big gem. It would be some time before his next notice, and even a thief like Dean needed a vacation. But even if he didn't need a theme for notice, Dean often found himself at the library. It had become a habit for him, and he would visit at least once a week. Dean wanted to perform advanced magic tricks that needed a deep understanding of psychology, physics, and even chemistry. Information is just as important to magic as anything else. It is difficult for Dean to gain the knowledge that he needs simply by studying in high school, so he has to go to the library to study by himself. It wasn't too difficult, as he didn't aim to become a scientist. He just needed to know the principles and how to apply them. Dean finished school at 4 in the afternoon, and the library closed at 8 in the evening. This gave him plenty of time to learn new things. Upon entering the library, Dean found a few books on the relevant shelves and settled down in a secluded spot. He didn't like having too many people around when he read. That's why he always chose a quiet spot whenever he visited the library. In Gotham, there were usually very few people who came to the library to read. There were plenty of empty seats, so Dean never had to worry about being disturbed by anyone. Clank! However, just as Dean had sat down and opened a book, the sound of a chair being moved came from across the table. Immediately after, there was a thud as something was placed on the table. Hey! Dean raised his head in surprise. In front of him sat a 14 or 15-year-old girl with black hair and black eyes. Her face and skin tone seemed to be Asian, which gave Dean an odd sense of familiarity. She was holding an incredibly thick black leather book, so thick that it couldn't be held with just one hand. The sound from earlier was the book being placed on the table. As for the title of the book, it was Complete Guide to World Languages Vocabulary. Chapter 112, Chapter 112, Mute Girl. It's impossible to work hard for something you don't enjoy. Silica, Sao. Complete Guide to World Language Vocabulary. As the name indicates, this is a dictionary that covers several of the world's most widely used languages and provides vocabulary comparisons between different languages. In short, it's like adding Russian, French, Spanish, and other languages into a Chinese-English dictionary. Moreover, this book likely contains common vocabulary, otherwise, its thickness wouldn't be just this small. Even if anyone considers students studying language-related majors, there probably aren't many normal people who would read something like this. Do girls these days really like reading these kinds of books? Watching the girl flip through that super thick dictionary with a serious expression, Dean couldn't help but think to himself. Oh well, it's none of my business what other people read. Just keep a poker face and pretend I didn't see anything. Dean shook his head inwardly and lowered his head to continue reading his own book. After a while, Dean suddenly felt a gaze on him, and it happened to be coming from across the table. Dean curiously raised his head to look at the girl sitting across from him. She showed a brief look of surprise in her eyes and quickly lowered her head into that massive dictionary again when she noticed Dean's gaze. What's going on? Dean couldn't quite understand. Ever since he had bought the talent of superhuman reflexes into the system, Dean realized that in addition to improved reaction speed, his observational skills and certain forms of perception had become a little bit more sensitive. He could even more intuitively sense others' gaze now rather than just experiencing some vague and indescribable feeling. At first, when Dean read the system's description of superhuman reflexes, it mentioned a significantly enhanced body's reaction ability for a short period of time, with the duration of the ability consuming more stamina. This description made Dean think that this talent might be a skill that consumed a lot of stamina and needed to be manually triggered. However, as he learned it over time, he began to understand its true purpose. It could enable Dean to break through the human body's limits of reaction. The ability to significantly increase reaction ability in a short period of time is not the greatest advantage of superhuman reflexes, nor is it its only effect. In Dean's daily life, his reaction abilities still showed performances beyond his previous self, even if the improvement was slight. The fact remained that Dean's reaction speed was continuously increasing. In other words, through continuous training and the passage of time, Dean's brain and body's reaction speed would become faster until they reached the limits of human capability or even exceeded them. In comparison, the role of the short-term, substantial reaction enhancement was more like the adrenaline rush people experience in specific situations, using a lot of physical energy to gain a momentary reaction far beyond human limits. Compared to that, the short-term significant increase in reaction ability is more like an adrenaline surge that happens in special situations for humans. By consuming a lot of physical energy, it can exchange for a brief period of reaction power that far exceeds human limits. The cost and benefit are directly balanced. In short, the existence of superhuman reflexes opened up entirely new possibilities for Dean's future. However, no matter how strong Dean's reaction power is, at the moment, there's no way for him to figure out what the girl opposite him is thinking of doing. Following the principle of better safe than sorry, Dean didn't pay too much attention to the girl's sneaky glances at him. After all, he used to be a talented magician in Gotham, and with his handsome face, he naturally attracted a lot of fans. Dean was often known on the street and asked for autographs or pictures. This happened so often that he often had to put on a disguise before going out. For a girl in her prime, like the one across the table, becoming a fan of Dean Thurston was just a normal thing. Seeing a real person now, she felt both excited and shy at the sight of him and did not know what to say, so it made sense for her to sneak a glance. Dean was aware of this and understood it well. Therefore, in order to avoid any awkwardness, Dean chose to forget about it and read his book in peace, letting his young fan admire his handsome face. Just kidding, of course that wasn't possible. Dean quickly realized that things were not as simple as they seemed. The girl across from him didn't seem to be one of his fans because, after Dean lowered his head, she stole another glance at him. When Dean looked up, she lowered her head again, repeating this action in a continuous loop. In the occasional eye contact, Dean didn't see the admiration in her eyes but rather the look of someone seeking help. Under the request for help, there was a hint of caution, or perhaps even wariness. A 14 or 15-year-old girl should naturally be cautious of a stranger, but what's with the constant glances at me? If you have something to say, just say it. Why not use your mouth to speak? I know I'm handsome, but I don't think I'm so handsome that people are afraid to talk, right? What's wrong? Do you need something? Dean shook his head helplessly and asked. Suddenly, a glimmer of hope appeared in the girl's eyes. She instinctively began making a few hand gestures towards Dean, but then she stopped halfway. Hey? Seeing these gestures, Dean's expression slightly froze. Those hand gestures seemed to be sign language. Why is this girl not speaking and only using sign language? After seeing her use sign language, Dean understood why. Dean had learned some sign language before, and although he wasn't very proficient, he could somewhat understand what the girl meant. May I ask you a few questions? There are a few words. The rest of the words are unclear because the girl stopped making gestures. What do you want to ask? Let me see. At this point, Dean also used sign language with the girl. He had quick fingers, but he had never used sign language to communicate with anyone before, so it was a little slow for him. But before Dean could finish all of his gestures, the girl's face lit up as she quickly made the sign for gratitude. The girl then moved to the seat next to Dean and took out the Complete Guide to World Language Vocabulary. She then pointed to a few words that were easy to understand. Moreover, they were English words, not French, Russian, or Spanish. Dean's expression froze again. If he remembered correctly, any elementary school student who can read should be able to understand words like these. But the girl in front of him couldn't understand the meaning of the words. Either she hadn't paid attention in school since day one, or she had never been to school at all. After a simple explanation, Dean curiously made a few sign language gestures. Did you often come here before? Who helped you with the questions you didn't understand? The girl nodded at first, showing that she did indeed come to the library often. Then, after a pause, she tilted her head and thought for a moment. Suddenly, she began rapidly flipping through the dictionary, found the term librarian, pointed it out to Dean, and continued flipping until she pointed to an English word. Barbara. Putting it all together, it meant the librarian, Barbara. Chapter 113, Chapter 113, Cassandra Cain. My mama always said, life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. Forrest Gump, Forrest Gump. Barbara. Dean nodded understandingly. He didn't realize that besides working in the library during the day and fighting crime as Batgirl at night, Barbara also found time to be a language teacher for this mute girl. At this point, the mute girl continued flipping through the book again and pointed to the name Cassandra, then looked at Dean and pointed to herself. Cassandra, is that your name? Dean gestured strangely and asked. He expected to hear a familiar name because Cassandra had a face that closely resembled someone Asian, but he didn't expect she had an American name. What about your last name? Suddenly, Cassandra's expression became complicated and showed regret, pain, resentment, shame, nostalgia, reminiscence. It was hard to imagine that a teenage girl would have such heavy expressions. Just as Dean thought he may have asked something unnecessary, Cassandra's face returned to normal, and she continued flipping through her book. Kane, that's my last name. Cassandra Kane is my full name. Dean thought for a moment, took out a pen from his pocket, and then found a piece of paper. He wrote down Dean Thurston on it. This is my name. Dean imitated Cassandra's gestures and pointed to himself, then pointed to the words on the paper. So, are we friends now? Cassandra eagerly signaled to Dean in sign language. Barbara said that exchanging names is the first step to becoming friends. Not yet, but maybe in the future. Making friends isn't that simple. Dean shook his head slightly and responded. You need to get to know someone before you can become friends with them. Cassandra nodded as if she kind of understood. From then on, they began to communicate using sign language or by writing and drawing on paper. However, since Cassandra hadn't received proper language education, her language skills were very poor, and she knew very few words. Reading and writing were a challenge for her. She often used drawings and doodling to express her thoughts that couldn't be easily communicated through gestures. But it was hard for most people to understand those doodles. Unfortunately for Cassandra, Dean was a magician. As a magician, the ability to observe one's thoughts and understand others' intentions was important. Solving or deciphering the doodles was a piece of cake for him. That's right, being a magician is such a suitable excuse. How should one respond to that? Their conversation began with Barbara as the starting point, since they both knew her. According to Cassandra's description, gestures. Gestures combined with doodles? Who cares? In short, according to Cassandra's story, because she couldn't speak, Barbara always took special care of her whenever she came to the library. Sometimes, Barbara would even set aside her daily work to help Cassandra with her questions. There were already a few people in the library, and those who understood sign language were even fewer. Some people even naturally discriminate against disabled individuals. And among the library staff, only Barbara understood sign language, so she was the only one who could help Cassandra, and she was willing to help. Because of this, Cassandra was very grateful to Barbara and always relied on her because it was the first time in many years of wandering that she had encountered someone who was so kind to her. Cassandra was an orphan and said to have been to many places, but she clearly didn't want to talk about the past, and Dean wasn't curious either, so he didn't ask too much about it. In addition, Cassandra was a bit socially anxious. Whenever she came to the library, she would find a place with fewer people. This was why she had chosen to sit next to Dean. Their choices for where to sit were a great match. A large table and a circle of small chairs surrounded in the library's seating arrangement. When Cassandra sat across from Dean before, there was actually quite a distance between them. As the conversation deepened, Dean had a faint feeling that Cassandra was basically a positive person and that her social anxiety wasn't because she couldn't speak and felt like she was inferior to others. Instead, he believed it was because she didn't interact with many people and didn't know how to communicate. In fact, Dean felt that Cassandra didn't really think that not being able to speak was a flaw but that it was just hard for her to communicate. During their interaction, Dean even performed a few small magic tricks for Cassandra. However, what troubled him was that the girl looked at him with innocent eyes from beginning to end, without a hint of surprise or astonishment. Dean even started to doubt if his skills had declined. By the way, I haven't seen Barbara today. While chatting, Dean suddenly looked around the library as if he remembered something, then glanced at the sky outside. It's not dark yet, so it's not time for Batgirl to show up, and it's not closing time at the library either, and today is not a holiday. Dean stroked his chin. Could it be that Barbara has been sitting in her office with the air conditioning on all day? This doesn't seem like her style. With Barbara's warm-hearted nature, if she had the time today when Cassandra visited, she would definitely have come to teach her how to read. At that moment, there was a librarian pushing a cart filled with books. Dean extended his hand to stop him and politely asked, "Excuse me, sir, can you tell us where Ms. Barbara Gordon is?" The librarian appeared somewhat surprised upon hearing Dean's question. "Do you know Director Gordon?" "Yes, we're friends with Barbara." Dean nodded. "I'm sorry, but Director Gordon took sick leave today. I heard she fell down from upstairs when she came home last night. She's currently in the hospital. If you want to find her, you'll need to go to Gotham General Hospital." The librarian sighed, "I really hope she's okay. It's hard to find the motivation to work when she's not around." A glint appeared in Dean's eyes. Similar to Dean's home, the house where Gordon lived was also a stand-alone home. The only difference was that it was bigger. The Gordon house had only 2 floors. Batgirl fell down the stairs at a 2-story house, and she ended up in the hospital? Dean didn't believe that nonsense. She's probably injured from a fight. Dean thought to himself. "I'd like to visit Barbara at the hospital. Would you like to come with me?" Suddenly, Cassandra walked up to Dean and made a few hand gestures with a hint of worry. "Isn't Barbara your friend?" Before Dean could react, Cassandra's expression turned apologetic as she continued to gesture. "Oh, I'm sorry. If you have other things to do." Seeing this, Dean shook his head with a smile. "I'll go with you. I'm also concerned about how serious Barbara's injuries might be." Dean remembered that Batgirl often patrolled the Upper West Side, and the most famous urban legend there recently was the Bat Monster. Now that Barbara suddenly got injured and ended up in the hospital, could there be a connection between the two? Chapter 114, Chapter 114, Bullying. Better to be slapped with the truth than kissed with a lie. Unknown. Dean looked at the increasingly dark sky outside the library and turned to Cassandra, using gestures as he asked. "Gotham General Hospital is quite far from here. Are you sure it's okay for you to come with me? We probably won't be back until it's late." Cassandra shook her head gently and responded with a few hand gestures. "It's okay. I've been wandering for many years and have gone days without sleep. Day and night are pretty much the same to me." Sorry, I said something unnecessary." Dean said it with a stuttered voice. "Also, you don't really need to use signs with me, Dean. I can understand what you're trying to say." Then Cassandra made a series of hand gestures towards Dean. "I know you're intentionally communicating with me using signs to make me feel more comfortable about being different from others. I appreciate your concern, but you don't have to do that. I'm already used to the ways I'm different from others. In the beginning, Barbara interacted with me using gestures just like you. But she doesn't do that anymore." Dean nodded in understanding. He had felt a bit awkward using both spoken language and gestures at the same time during their conversation. Speaking had become an instinct for him, and it was difficult to suddenly change. Since Cassandra said it was okay and even brought up Barbara as an example, Dean quickly stopped gesturing and spoke normally. "By the way, those gestures she used earlier, if I'm not mistaken, meant I can see what you're saying. Why is it see and not hear?" Dean wondered in his mind but didn't dwell on this matter. It was probably due to gesturing too quickly, like how people can stutter when they speak too fast. Dean and Cassandra headed to Gotham General Hospital and planned to call a taxi on the way. Even though it's best not to get into a car with any strangers in Gotham, whether it's a bus or a taxi, especially at night, Dean had just gotten his driver's license 2 months ago and hadn't bought a car yet. Without a personal mode of transportation for daily use, he usually either took a taxi or walked. The distance between Gotham General Hospital and Gotham City Public Library was far away. Walking along the main road would take over an hour one way, making the round trip nearly 3 hours. In this situation, choosing a taxi was a good choice. Normally, Dean wouldn't waste money like this. He would just find a secluded place to change into his homemade version of the Batsuit and glide around Gotham using his temporary Bat glider. After all, Batman wasn't in Gotham, and he had nothing to worry about. Wearing that suit, no one would dare approach him, even in alleyways. Those petty criminals who only bully the weak, seeing Batman, would turn around and run away. The Batsuit is truly an important piece of clothing for walking around Gotham City at night. However, now with a mute little sister by his side, Dean can no longer do those shady activities. He must follow the right path. Unfortunately, it seems like all the taxi companies in Gotham are on vacation today because the two of them have been walking for quite a while and haven't even seen a single taxi. They can't continue like this. Maybe he should ask Cassandra to head back first. On the side of the road, Dean pondered, resting his chin on his hand. Cassandra, what if you... Dean's words were interrupted as Cassandra suddenly ran into a nearby alley. Hey, hey! That place is dangerous. It's not where a young girl like you should go. Seeing Cassandra's actions, Dean tried to stop her immediately by running over and pulling her back. However, when Dean grabbed Cassandra's shoulder, he was shocked to find that he couldn't move her. Additionally, Cassandra was pulling Dean's body forward. He was unwilling to believe what's happening. Dean tries harder to pull Cassandra back, but she remains unmoved. Not only that, but Cassandra's sprinting speed is getting faster, and Dean realizes that he can barely keep up. How can this little girl be so strong? And she's running so fast? Even professional sprinters might not match this, right? Dean felt disbelief in his mind as he fell behind. Could she be a superhuman? A meta-human? Or maybe an alien? After rushing into the alley, Cassandra's figure suddenly stops, and she looks expressionless as she stares into the alley. Not far from them, a thin, weak-looking boy was sitting on the ground with his back against the wall. 3 boys the same age as him surrounded him, their faces contorted with scorn and mockery. These people are quite young, around 18 or 19 years old, probably still in college, and most likely attending one of Gotham's public universities. The leader among them, a big-built guy, had his foot against the wall while his shoulder was pressed onto the boy named Mikey. He said, "Mickey, you made a big mistake today. Do you know what it is? You passed through the entrance of this alley. Do you know why? This is our territory." Immediately, the 2 boys beside him sounded in, "Our territory. I'll tell you, we don't take trash here, and we don't welcome you." "Yes, that's right, you're just a pathetic piece of trash." The big guy continued to insult Mikey. "Trash! Trash!" The 2 boys cheered from the side. The big guy reached into Mikey's pockets, simply searching, and eventually pulled out $21. "You've only got this much money on you? Truly living up to your trash status." As Dean watched this scene happen before him, his eyelids twitched uncontrollably, and his mouth kept twitching. What in the world is this? Does Gotham have people like these? Cassandra's face next to his displayed a hint of dissatisfaction, as if she couldn't stand such bullying of the weak. At this moment, the 3 bullies noticed the arrival of 2 unexpected guests. The big guy first sized up Dean and Cassandra, then his eyes flickered with disdain. He arrogantly sneered at the 2 and said, "Here come 2 more little pieces of trash. Listen up, you 2 little trash. This is the territory of our masked gang, and anyone who wants to pass here has to pay." Saying this, all 3 bullies pulled out strange skull masks, yellow, green, and red. They didn't look intimidating at all, instead, they had a strange comedic vibe. But wait, their faces were already fully visible. What's the point of wearing masks now? Dean didn't understand, but he was really surprised. A few seconds later, Dean's expression turned slightly serious because these 3 masked gang members revealed weapons. 2 baseball bats and a golf club. Chapter 115, Chapter 115 Act Forgetting is like a wound. The wound may heal but it has already left a scar. Monkey D. Luffy, One Piece. Hey! You two trash over there, did you not hear me? Give me your money now. Do you want me to hit you with my baseball bat? The big guy raised his baseball bat threateningly towards Dean and Cassandra. Dean glanced back cautiously, silently confirming that there was no one hiding behind them. He was done trying to reason with these three bullies, who called themselves the Masked Gang. So, they only rob people on the street? They don't block their escape routes? Don't they worry that people will just run away since they don't have guns? If all the thieves in Gotham are this stupid, Batman might as well retire. Even half of the GCPD's detectives would have to find other jobs. The big guy signaled his two companions, and the three of them approached Dean and Cassandra with their weapons. Dean shook his head helplessly. Gotham's alleys were really a mysterious place where you could encounter all sorts of people and things. Swish! At that moment, Cassandra, who had been silent by Dean's side, suddenly dashed out. Her speed far surpassed what Dean had seen earlier. She turned into a long black shadow and quickly came to the three bullies in front of her. But these three stupid guys hadn't realized the seriousness of the situation yet. When they saw the small, skinny girl charging towards them, they burst into laughter. Look at that, the expression on that little girl's face is so scary. I'm really scared. Oh, I want to go home and find my mommy. The leader of the gang mocked her with a smirk. And there's that skinny monkey over there, too scared to even move a muscle because of us. Ah! Before he could finish his sentence, a sharp pain shot up from his leg. It turned out that Cassandra had sprinted to the front of the big guy without them noticing and kicked his leg. Crack! The big guy's screams echoed along with the sharp sound of breaking bones. Ah! Son of a, you little brat, how dare you bitch! The big guy clutched his injured leg and rolled on the ground. It hurts. It hurts so much. Mommy! Mommy! Boss! The two big boys behind them saw their leader being taken down in an instant, but they didn't flinch. They picked up their baseball bats and swung them at Cassandra. Cassandra easily dodged their attacks with a casual sidestep, then took advantage of her small figure to slip through the gap between the two boys. Following that, she swiftly swept her leg to trip the small boy on the right. On the left, the thug was shocked and quickly swung his baseball bat at Cassandra. Cassandra swiftly stood up from the ground and grabbed the boy's hand as he swung the bat. She cleverly hit his wrist, causing him to let go of the bat due to the pain. At that moment, another boy who had just been tripped was about to stand back up. Without hesitation, Cassandra elbowed the boy in the ribs, making a crisp snap sound. She delivered multiple blows, causing the boy's face to twist in pain, unable to scream. But Cassandra wasn't done yet. After the elbow strikes, she immediately grabs his arm and throws him over her shoulder. At the same time, the boy who had just stood up collided with the other fallen boy. The impact was strong, and both of them fell to the ground in a pile. The boy who had just stood up didn't even have time to understand what had just happened before another person landed on top of him. The force was so strong that he lost consciousness as soon as he hit the ground. The conscious boy lying on top of him, although still aware, had several ribs broken by Cassandra. The intense pain contorted his face, leaving him clearly unable to counterattack. After completing all of this, Cassandra stood expressionless in her original spot. On her left was the big guy, squirming in pain and clutching his leg. On her right were two boys lying on top of each other on the ground. In the blink of an eye, the entire process seemed complicated, but it was actually completed within a few seconds. Cassandra's moves were quick and accurate, and she didn't waste time. Each strike she made was meant to disable her opponents. Her attacks were ruthless, breaking bones without regret or hesitation. It's as if breaking bones was just an ordinary thing to her. Is it normal for a 14-year-old girl to behave like this? Moreover, her movements didn't seem random, but rather, they appeared to be from professional training. If he had to say, it was similar to Robin, a young man who had gone through multiple fights to become a skilled fighter. Dean was observing the entire process and thinking to himself, I even prepared these things, but it seems they're not of much use now. Dean looked down at the stones in his hand and sighed inwardly. Hiss. On the other side, Mikey, who had been bullied in the corner, saw everything that had just happened and couldn't help but gasp in disbelief. He recalled Cassandra's Asian appearance, and his heart skipped a beat. Is this legendary, kung fu stuff? At this moment, Cassandra turned around and waved at Dean, who was in the middle of the alley. Then she gestured a few times. Don't be afraid, come over here quickly. I've taken care of the bad guys. What she didn't see was the sudden change in the expression of Mikey, the skinny guy who had been sitting against the wall in a corner. From somewhere, Mikey had pulled out a small gun and discreetly aimed it at Cassandra. Those three idiots are such losers, they couldn't even beat a little girl? It's unbelievable how I had to cooperate with them in this stupid act. I've never seen that little girl before, she's dressed in cheap clothes, probably not worth much. But that guy over there, if my memory serves me right, he's Dean Thurston, a famous prodigy magician. He must be loaded. Mikey greedily eyed Dean for a moment, then turned his gaze back to Cassandra. As long as I take care of this girl who can do the fight, Dean Thurston won't escape my grasp. Imagining the life he could lead after taking the Thurston family's fortune, Mikey smirked and pulled the trigger. Whoosh! In an instant, a stone came flying from nowhere and hit Mikey's gun. Ah! The stone hit with a lot of force, so Mickey had to let go of the gun out of pain. Hearing the noise, Cassandra turned her head instantly and saw Mikey dropping his gun. It was clear that Mickey had intended to hurt her. At that moment, an unusual anger surged within Cassandra. 1 second, she was protecting someone, and the next second, that person wanted to hurt her. Chapter 116, Chapter 116, The Art of Throwing. See, it's not just about being in charge. It's about deciding how you want to be in charge. Teddy MacDonald, Snowfall. After a while, Cassandra clapped her hands and returned to Dean's side with an expressionless face. Mikey lay on the ground, barely breathing, his eyes rolling back and moaning in pain. Dean didn't want to count how many bones were broken in his body, but it was definitely more than the other three combined. While Cassandra's attacks were ruthless, she still had some restraint. Even the most beaten-up Mikey was spared his life. But that wasn't the point. The point was that Cassandra had vented her frustrations and cleared a path for them. Let's take this path. It'll take less than half an hour to get to Gotham General Hospital. Cassandra calmly gestured to Dean. So, you didn't run over here earlier because you heard someone being bullied, but to take a shortcut. Her unexpected response caused Dean to blink in confusion. This wasn't going as expected. It would save a lot of time to go through this. At first, he didn't know how strong Cassandra was and didn't want to risk her safety. Gotham's alleys were always full of danger, and while Dean was kind-hearted, he couldn't bear to expose an innocent girl to potential harm. But now things were different. With Cassandra's skills, it would be difficult for 3 to 5 people to even get close to her. There wouldn't be any problem walking through Gotham's alleys. Other people should be afraid. We better hurry. Although I haven't been around Gotham for long, I've already experienced how unsafe it can be at night. The later it gets, the more dangerous it becomes. Going home alone will be troublesome. Cassandra quickly gestured to Dean, although her meaning made Dean laugh and cry at the same time. He didn't expect Cassandra to worry about his personal safety. Without asking for permission, she grabbed Dean's hand and led him through the group of 4 robbers without any hesitation. As they walked, Cassandra suddenly turned her head to look at Dean. There was some hesitation on her face, as if she were unsure whether to say or not. But in the end, she made up her mind to tell Dean. The force you threw the stone with earlier, was a bit off. Cassandra cautiously gestured as if she were very concerned about Dean's reaction. The force was off. Dean raised an eyebrow with a slightly surprised look on his face. Cassandra nodded and gestured, although you used the stone to knock the guy's gun away, you wasted a lot of strength. A better way to throw the stone would have made it faster, reach farther, be more invisible, and also save energy. She gestured further and looked around. She picked up a small, odd-shaped stone from the ground to show Dean. The stone was about the size of a thumb, and its shape was very odd. Cassandra stood still and gestured for Dean to look at the balcony on the second floor of a nearby building, where a green plant was visible. The exact species of the plant was unclear, but it was clear that its extending branches were quite long and eye-catching. It's about 30 meters away from here. Do you think you can use such a small stone to throw and break one of those branches? Dean imagined what he would do if he were in her shoes. It shouldn't be difficult to do, it just requires a bit more effort. He turned to look at Cassandra and pondered what she might do next. Then, Cassandra held the stone between two fingers and twisted her arm at a peculiar angle. Even the angle of her wrist was different from how a normal person would throw something. Soon after, Cassandra's arm snapped forward like a spring squeezed to its limit, incredibly swift and even leaving a faint afterimage behind as she gently released the stone. Even though Cassandra's motion in throwing the stone was so fast that it almost resembled an afterimage, it seemed to Dean as if she didn't use much strength at all. Contrary to what Dean thought, the stone flew at an amazing speed and hit the potted plant on the balcony with accuracy, breaking the thin branch that extended from it. Just how fast was that speed? Let's put it this way, almost at the same time Dean saw the stone leaving Cassandra's hand, in less than a second, the branch fell from the balcony. And Dean completely missed the stone's trajectory in the air, he didn't even hear a sound. Honestly speaking, Cassandra's move really amazed Dean. It was just too hard to understand. Could this be the long-lost finger-flicking technique? Dean wondered with disbelief in his mind. Give me your hand. At this moment, Cassandra extended her hand to Dean, gesturing for him to give her his hand. Dean's mind stirred, and he immediately stretched out his right hand, and then Cassandra swung Dean's arm. She guided him into a posture similar to how she had thrown the stone earlier. Weren't you saying that you needed to hurry and see Barbara? Can you teach me this now? It seems like the kind of skill that can't be learned in just a day or two, right? Dean curiously asked as he let Cassandra manipulate his arm. It's all right. I've observed your body already. Your foundation is actually much better than you think, and this isn't something very difficult. It's just a matter of simple technique for exerting force. I think you should be able to grasp the basics in about 5 minutes. Cassandra waved her hand, reassuring Dean not to worry. After all, throwing stones randomly near a hospital wouldn't be a good idea. Wait, what do you mean by observed my body? Dean's eyebrows twitched. Cassandra didn't respond to that and instead pointed and directed at Dean's body, telling him where to exert force and where not to exert too much force. 5 minutes later, Dean looked at the last broken branch on the balcony and smiled with satisfaction. Although he couldn't do it as easily as Cassandra, Dean had already learned the basics. He was confident that it wouldn't take him long to fully master this technique. In fact, his card-throwing skills would even improve by several levels in the future. He had truly learned a valuable technique this time. Cassandra, thank you for teaching me this useful throwing technique. Dean sincerely thanked her. Consider it a return for you teaching me how to read at the library. Cassandra smiled and waved her hand. After some time, the two of them passed through several narrow alleys and finally arrived at their destination. Gotham General Hospital. They encountered 2 incidents of robbery along the way, but they were on a different level compared to those 4 idiots from Mikey. These were real robberies. As for the fate of these robbers, it goes without saying. When Dean and Cassandra arrived at Barbara's private room based on the information provided by the librarian, there were already 2 people visiting her. Chapter 117, Chapter 117, First Meeting. Sometimes to love someone, you gotta be a stranger. Love, The Blade Runner 2049. Inside the hospital room, Barbara lay on the bed with a bandaged right arm and a cast on her left foot. Standing beside the bed are two people, one tall and one small. The tall one is muscular and handsome, wearing a custom-made, expensive suit and a valuable watch. His blue eyes give off a sense of depth that is hard to understand. The small one, although not as tall as the first, is still stronger than the average person. He wears casual clothes and is handsome in a different way. The glimpse in his eyes reveals purity instead of depth. Both of them have blue eyes, but they give off completely different feelings. Clang! At this moment, the door to the hospital room suddenly opens, and Dean and Cassandra stand at the entrance and look at the three people in the room. Dick. Dean immediately recognized the familiar face in the room. Dean? Why are you here? Dick looked surprised at Dean's sudden appearance and asked. And who's the little girl behind you? Cassandra. How did you get here? Meanwhile, Barbara on the hospital bed noticed Cassandra's appearance and asked quickly. And why are you with Dean? Hey, can you two ask your questions separately? Dean raises his hands helplessly. With so many questions coming at me, I don't even know where to start. Just start from the beginning. Dick couldn't help but roll his eyes. Okay, the truth is that I was at the library today and happened to run into Cassandra. She needed some help, and I helped her. That's how we got to know each other. Then we heard from the library manager that Barbara was hospitalized, so we decided to come visit. Dean summarizes the situation. So why did you bring Cassandra to visit Barbara? Dick doesn't know Cassandra and doesn't know about Barbara's connection with Cassandra. Cassandra is a very unfortunate child. She ran away from home when she was very young and lived on the streets for many years. Barbara starts to explain their meeting with Cassandra. Then she looked at Cassandra and nodded to show that she didn't mind. This child never went to school and couldn't speak. One day, I saw her looking inside the library through the window, and then Barbara tells the story of how she and Cassandra met. Since then, Cassandra has been coming to the library often, and I have been teaching her how to read. Listening to the story, Dean suddenly felt that something was off. Why doesn't Barbara mention Cassandra's strong martial arts skills? Does she not know, or is she intentionally hiding this information? Dean looks at Barbara, then at Cassandra. If Cassandra's being skilled in fighting is a secret that needs to be kept secret, then she wouldn't have been able to display her strength in front of Dean earlier. Even though Dean knew Barbara and patiently taught Cassandra some new words, it wouldn't make sense for her to put so much trust in someone she was just meeting, right? But it's also unlikely that Barbara doesn't know that Cassandra knows martial arts. They have known each other for a long time, even longer than Dean. Surely Barbara would know something that Dean knows? Of course, it's also possible that Barbara only met Cassandra in the library. At night, Barbara becomes Batgirl, and she doesn't have the opportunity to see Cassandra show her fighting skills. So, Cassandra is your name, right? Suddenly, a voice came from beside Dean. It turned out to be the tall, middle-aged man in the hospital room who had quietly walked up to Cassandra. Cassandra looked up at him with big eyes and nodded silently. I'm Bruce Wayne. If you need help, you can go to the Wayne Foundation. There's a welfare home specially built for homeless children there. You can receive financial support every month and get free sponsorship for education. Bruce's face revealed a warm smile as he spoke gently to Cassandra. In that instant, Dean vaguely noticed Dick and Barbara's eyes twitching at the same time, but he didn't know why. Cassandra shook her head lightly and made a few gestures toward Bruce. All right, I understand. But the Wayne Foundation is always ready to help you if you need it. Bruce sighed. It was really difficult to do something good in Gotham. There were too many people like Cassandra who would rather live on the streets than accept help from the Wayne Foundation. He had enough technology to monitor the flow of funds in the Wayne Foundation in real time, effectively preventing embezzlement of the charitable funds. He always ensured that every penny went to the right place. But people's deep-rooted distrust of the word charity was hard to erase. Most people would rather just take a small amount of money each month than choose the free accommodations, meals, and education support provided by Wayne Welfare Homes. Even so, Bruce led Wayne Enterprises to spare no effort in transforming Gotham, constructing projects, improving education, investing in healthcare, and lowering prices, creating countless job opportunities for the people of Gotham. Bruce and the board of directors of Wayne Enterprises often fought over these expensive investments, which led to a tense situation. If it wasn't for his extraordinary skills, he would probably have been taken down a long time ago. Despite all this, Gotham's situation is improving under Bruce's efforts. It has advanced technology, a flourishing economy, developed education and healthcare, and the quality of life for residents is improving daily. But all of this seems to belong only to Gotham during the day. Once night falls, Gotham's prosperity becomes a mirage, and evil stays like a stubborn infection. Why? Bruce has pondered this question many times, but even with his intelligence, he hasn't figured out the root cause. It seems like we're getting a little off topic, but it's not important anyway. It's just a momentary thought. Beside him, when Bruce and Cassandra finished speaking, Dean eagerly said to Bruce, "I never thought I would meet you here, Mr. Wayne. I often saw your impressive deeds on the news and heard many stories about you from Dick. I've been wanting to meet you for a long time, and today my wish has finally come true." Dean's expression was real. The person in front of him is none other than Batman, the father of DC Comics and the world's greatest detective. He has heard about Batman since childhood. If he didn't feel excited at this first meeting, that would be a lie. Of course, this might also have something to do with the fact that Dean's system. If he had enough power, maybe he wouldn't care so much about Batman. "If I'm not mistaken, you are Dean Thurston, the top prodigy magician in Gotham." Bruce smiled at Dean. "I've wanted to see your performances at the Gotham Grand Theatre a number of times, but other matters always kept me from going. By the time I had the chance, I had heard that you no longer perform publicly." "That's right, I haven't been on stage for 2 years because I wanted to focus on my life and studies." Dean nodded. "I've watched some recordings of your magic performances, and it's really impressive that you've reached such a high level at your age. I even think your skills from a few years ago could rival Zatanna's." Bruce casually chatted with Dean, who couldn't find any unusual expressions on his face. It was as if he was just a very approachable billionaire, no different from anyone else, unlike the silent and serious Batman. Dean was well aware that the man in front of him was not an ordinary person. To be honest, he wasn't sure if he should have a conversation with Bruce. If he accidentally revealed any information, his identity might be exposed. But not speaking would only create even bigger issues. As the saying goes, the more one tries to hide something, the more likely it is to be discovered. So Dean decided to just be himself without carefully thinking about what to say or not to say. He would say whatever came to his mind and be as natural as possible. After all, he couldn't suddenly say, "Hey, Mr. Wayne, I think you look a lot like Batman," or "Did you know, Mr. Wayne, that I'm actually a phantom thief?" "You flatter me, Mr. Wayne. Zatanna has perfectly inherited the talent of the great Zatara. I've been lucky enough to see her perform on stage a few times. Her mastery of magic far exceeds mine. Even the simplest magic tricks become truly magical in her hands." Dean responded to Bruce's praise. In the face of Bruce's compliment, Dean shook his head, laughing himself, and said, "Compared to her, I'm practically a beginner just starting to learn magic." "Humility is a good quality, young man, but excessive humility is unnecessary." Bruce chuckled. Hey! How long are you two going to chat?" I thought you were both here to visit me. Barbara suddenly spoke from the hospital bed, pursing her lips. Oh dear, I suddenly remembered something important. Dean slapped his forehead, spread his empty hands, and groaned, how could I come to visit without bringing anything? It's okay, you only found out about this from the library after all. It's already a lovely surprise for me that you came to visit. Barbara laughed nonchalantly. That won't do. Dean rubbed his chin and thought for a moment, then his eyes suddenly lit up. I've got it. How about some fruit? Barbara, do you like oranges? Or strawberries? Here we go again. I know what you're up to, magic time, right? Dick, who was nearby, had an expression as if he had known this would happen. Dean, if you already have the fruit ready, just bring it out. I don't know where you've hidden the oranges or strawberries. Shut up, Dick. Barbara said impatiently, then looked at Dean with interest. Dean, magicians usually prepare the necessary props in advance for their magic performances, so I choose blueberries. Barbara suggested with a slightly upturned corner of her mouth, eagerly anticipating Dean's next move. Bruce smiled and watched the young people's playfulness without saying a word, just quietly standing by, not knowing what he was thinking. At the back, Cassandra looked at the group in the hospital room in utter confusion. She couldn't speak and didn't understand language, which meant she couldn't understand the meaning of spoken words. Although she didn't have any hearing impairment and even had better hearing than the average person, Cassandra couldn't understand any spoken language. The reason why Cassandra could still communicate normally with others was because she had an extraordinary ability: she could read people's body language. The movement of hands, the motion of legs, the shaking of the body, the turning of the head, the opening and closing of the mouth, the opening and closing of eyes, all actions of the human body would reveal information invisibly, and Cassandra was able to understand these pieces of information. As long as a person's body was still moving, Cassandra could judge what the person wanted to say or do by reading their body language. In a certain sense, she could even predict something like an opponent's moves. This almost superpower-like bug technique seemed perfect, but in fact, it had a major flaw. If the other person's body wasn't moving, Cassandra would not be able to read their body language. Also, when she encounters certain strange signals, Cassandra can't understand their meanings. For example, the term that Dean and the others had just mentioned is magic. Cassandra had never seen a magic performance since birth, and while living on the street since the age of 9, she had never encountered the concept of magic. Perhaps it sounds incredible, but she really didn't know what magic was, nor did she know what Dean planned to do. Blueberries, hey? That's a bit difficult, but it's okay, magicians are born to do the impossible. After hearing Barbara's choice, Dean first rubbed the back of his head in distress and then turned the conversation around confidently. He walked to the cabinet beside the hospital bed, pushed some items on top to one side, and instructed Dick. Dick, could you please find a handkerchief or piece of cloth? Tisk, you sure know how to order people around. Dick rolled his eyes and remarked, but he still took the initiative to find the prop for Dean. A white handkerchief. Mr. Wayne. At this point, Dean called out Bruce's name and smiled. You mentioned earlier that you've always wanted to see my magic show in person, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. So, I would like to invite you to join me in completing this magic trick. Oh. Bruce smiled slightly with a hint of playfulness and reminded Dean, I forgot to tell you that when I was young, I studied under Zadara for some time. At that time, Zadana's talent was not as good as mine. Are you not afraid that I'll expose your trick on the spot? Well, then I can only ask Mr. Wayne to go easy on me and let me off the hook. Dean shrugged helplessly. Seeing that Dean said this, Bruce came to Dean's side and asked curiously, What do you need me to do, Master Thurston? Chapter 118, Chapter 118, A Show for Batman. A person can change, at the moment when the person wishes to change. Harui Fujoka, Aran High School Host Club. Please take this handkerchief, Mr. Wayne. Dean gave Bruce the handkerchief that Dick had brought. Then, Dean moved to the side to reveal an empty space in front of the cabinet. Next, please stand in the exact spot where I was standing earlier. It must be exactly where I stood. Your body should face the center of the cabinet, and your toes should be about 30 centimeters away from it. Dean explained gently. He knew that these instructions were meaningless and wouldn't affect the performance of the magic trick. But he emphasized the importance of the position in order to divert people's attention away from the real secret of the trick. Smart people would focus on the position and watch the area to see if anything seemed out of place, but they would miss the real key in the process. This is a common technique used by magicians called misdirection. Bruce followed Dean's instructions, stood in front of the cabinet, and seemed unfazed. Before coming over, he had already observed the cabinet and his own position but didn't notice anything suspicious. Bruce is confident in his observational skills and is sure that the key doesn't lie here. Therefore, his attention stays on Dean. Meanwhile, Dick watched Dean's earnest instructions to Bruce with suppressed laughter. Dean, it's going to be tough for you to show off with magic this time. It would have been better if Bruce didn't participate, but now you've made him your assistant. Bruce is different from me, he won't really cooperate with you to perform magic tricks. Dick teased Dean with a mischievous look. Dean didn't mind and continued to speak to Bruce. Mr. Wayne, please unfold the handkerchief and try to flatten it as much as possible. Bruce followed the instructions, grabbing the two sides of the handkerchief and stretching it out. Then, Dean closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and said solemnly, "Now, I am going to cast a magical spell on this handkerchief." Dean extended his hands over the handkerchief, his eyes shut tight as he chanted under his breath. Suddenly, he opened his eyes wide, retracting his hands and sighing softly. "All right, the spell has been placed on this handkerchief. Mr. Wayne, please gently lower the handkerchief down and do it slowly. Remember, the handkerchief must maintain its current flat state. There should be no change, and it must not extend beyond the surface of the cabinet. Otherwise, the spell will be broken." Listening to Dean's explanation, Bruce asked thoughtfully, "Are you sure you want me to handle the entire process? Shouldn't you be the one to release the handkerchief in the end?" Dean smiled faintly and replied, "If I were the one to finish the trick, then this magic wouldn't feel entirely impossible to achieve, wouldn't it? That doesn't fit with the goal of any magician. Just focus on your actions, Mr. Wayne, because I have already prepared everything." At this point, Bruce's interest was finally piqued. He looked at the handkerchief and found no possibility of any tools. The cabinet was already part of the hospital and couldn't have been tampered with. So how did Dean plan to make the blueberries appear? And what was the purpose of the handkerchief? Bruce was left with these questions while he followed the instructions and slowly lowered the handkerchief. Just as the handkerchief was a short distance away from the table, Bruce suddenly noticed that a part of the normally flat surface of the handkerchief was faintly protruding. As Bruce continued to press the handkerchief downward, the shape of the bump became clearer. It was a rectangle, slightly smaller than the overall size of the handkerchief. It was as if there was something beneath the handkerchief. But Bruce knew that this was almost impossible. When did he put it there? Bruce thought back to every detail that had happened just now and couldn't figure out when Dean had placed something under the handkerchief. He couldn't understand how Dean managed to do all of this without him noticing. Seeing Bruce's reaction, Dean calmly said, "Excellent, Mr. Wayne. You can let go now." Bruce nodded silently and released his grip, expecting the handkerchief to land on the surface of the cabinet. Instead of landing on the cabinet's surface as expected, the handkerchief remained suspended midair, with only the corners hanging down. The whole scene clearly showed a handkerchief covering a rectangular object underneath. At this moment, Dean walked forward and lifted the handkerchief, revealing a box of blueberries underneath. Each one was plump, fresh, and tempting, making anyone's mouth water. "Barbara, this is a little gift I brought today." Dean said it with a smile and then stepped aside. "What did you just do?" Barbara on the hospital bed looked astonished at the box of fresh blueberries, her expression filled with disbelief. Even Dick was shocked at this moment, not because of the box of blueberries that appeared out of thin air, but because he actually saw a hint of surprise in Bruce's eyes. Bruce hadn't seen through Dean's magic trick. In the middle of the shock, Dick thought to himself, It's interesting to surprise Bruce, who has always known everything." Dean turned to look at Bruce and asked politely, "Are you satisfied with this magic trick, Mr. Wayne? If you're curious about magic's principles, I'm sorry, but I can't reveal them because they're my secret weapon. But I can assure you that it's not actual magic. I am very satisfied. It was a splendid magic trick. I almost thought it was actual magic." Bruce clapped his hands and exclaimed. After some commercial praise, Dean started asking about Barbara's condition. Overall, Barbara's injuries were not too serious. Although she had fractures in her hands and feet, the situation was manageable, and she would recover in 2 months. Cassandra quietly listened to the others' conversation from the side without saying a word, even though she wanted to speak but couldn't. After a while, Dean glanced at the time and said his goodbye. "I'm sorry, it's getting a bit late now. I'll head back for today." Chapter 119, Chapter 119, Reminiscent. Whatever you lose, you'll find it again. But what you throw away you'll never get back. Kenshin Himura, Rurouni Kenshin, Miji Kenkakuro Manton. A/N, the age issue regarding Cassandra is a bit complicated, as she first appeared in No Man's Land when she was 17 years old. We know that No Man's Land takes place when Tim Drake is around 15 years old. Tim became Robin at 13, shortly after Jason Todd's death. Jason only served as Robin for about 2 years before his death. After Dick Grayson became Nightwing, he was replaced by Jason as Robin after only a few months. Dick was Robin for the longest time, about 4 to 5 years. Despite some significant timeline issues, this is a relatively acceptable age difference within the Bat family. In this story, the timeline is set about a year to 6 months before Dick started soloing as Nightwing. Based on Cassandra's age of 17 in No Man's Land, she would be around 12 years old at this time. So, in this story, I have made Cassandra about 2 years older, but I assure you that it won't affect the plot in any way. Also, this story absolutely will not include any DC movies or use any character designs from DC movies. I know many people enjoy Zack Snyder's films, but, I'm sorry, according to the timeline, Zack Snyder's version had already concluded its storyline several years before this story's current point. Looking at Dean leaving the ward, Bruce turned his gaze back to Cassandra in the corner, with a mysterious glint in his eyes. "Do you have a place to stay? It's late now, aren't you going back?" Bruce asked. Cassandra shook her head, walking straight to Barbara's bedside and bringing a chair to sit down. Seeing this, Barbara explained to Bruce and Dick, "Back when I met Cassandra, I found her a place to stay. It's a bit simple, but better than being homeless or sleeping in the sewers. She doesn't have any family or relatives, and she rarely interacts with others. So if she wants to stay, let her be here." "All right." Bruce nodded and then called Dick. "Dick, we need to go too. There's not much time left tonight." After finishing speaking, he got up and walked towards the door of the room. Before opening it, he turned back to give a final word to Barbara. "Get well soon, Barbara. Your work is important, more important than you can imagine, so you must not let the pain defeat you. Dick, what are you waiting for? Come on." Hearing this, Dick followed with reluctance and bid farewell to Barbara. "We're leaving, Barbara. I hope you recover quickly." "Thank you, I'll try to get better as soon as possible if it works." Barbara smiled faintly. "Hurry up, or Bruce will say you're always dragging your feet." Cassandra silently watched the events that just took place, her eyes flashing with unknown thoughts. On the other hand, Bruce and Dick walked out of the hospital and into an alley. There was a pitch-black sports car parked there. Strangely, this car had no license plates and looked different from any model from any car manufacturer in the world. Bruce took out the car keys and pressed a button on it. Suddenly, the car in front of them began to change. The front hood of the car automatically flipped over and closed again, and the rear extended into wings resembling bat wings, giving the car an extremely sleek aerodynamic shape that greatly reduced air resistance. The front half of the car extended outward, giving it an unusual appearance, and it had 2 additional thrusters at the back. In a matter of seconds, this seemingly ordinary sports car completely transformed, as if it had been flipped from the inside out. Any citizen of Gotham would know what this car symbolized. The Batmobile is Batman's most often used vehicle. Nobody knows what's inside the Batmobile, just like nobody knows what weapons Batman can pull out. Transformation, automatic driving, remote control, these are just its basic functions. Bruce and Dick knew what to do, so they put on their suits and got into the car without much thought. "It seems like you're particularly interested in that girl named Cassandra," Dick suddenly said. "Why? I know you have sympathy for every poor soul, but the way you look at that girl goes beyond sympathy. I want to know why. What could a 14-year-old mute girl have that's worth your attention?" Bruce was silent for a while and then responded with a serious expression, "She reminds me of someone. Cassandra, her appearance, her behavior, all make me think of someone I've seen before, someone extremely dangerous." "Who?" Dick pressed on. "It's none of your concern, Robin. Did you forget what I told you? Your only task tonight." Bruce's expression darkened, and he automatically switched to calling Dick Robin. "Is to follow your orders in every action, don't speak unnecessarily, and don't do anything unnecessary." Robin continued Bruce's sentence and then shrugged. Sure, you're the boss, Batman." Batman started the Batmobile expressionlessly and drove out of the alley, heading towards the distance. The speed of the car almost exceeded the city's speed limit as soon as it started, and the Batmobile's speed continued to increase. Robin was already used to Batman's fast driving, because how else could they patrol the entire city in the shortest amount of time and arrive at each crime scene in time? "So, where are we going to find that Bat monster?" Robin asked. "It's said to be active in the Upper West District, but the Upper West District is the second most prosperous district in Gotham after the Diamond District. The environment there shouldn't be suitable for a bat to survive." "Robin!" Batman's voice grew heavy as he roared lowly. All right, I'll shut up." To avoid further provoking Batman, Robin quickly covered his mouth with his hand. What Bruce and Dick didn't know was that, right after the Batmobile left the alley, a head quietly peeked out from the rooftop on the side of the alley. "I hope I wasn't spotted." Dean rubbed his chin and thought to himself. At the moment, he certainly wasn't in his original appearance but was disguised as an average person. While he wasn't sure if he had been discovered by the Batmobile's technology and if his disguise could fool Batman, it was necessary to be prepared. At least for now, there was nothing suspicious about Dean. Even if Batman's paranoia made him doubt Dean, it was just his personal habit. Frankly, anyone Batman encountered was doubted by him, and actually investigating and monitoring someone to confirm suspicions needs further evidence. After all, Batman is very busy and doesn't have the time to thoroughly investigate everyone unless he already knows that Dean isn't just an ordinary person. But Batman wasn't omnipotent. Can he really predict everything? Furthermore, Robin and Batgirl had already investigated Dean and confirmed his identity. Even if Batman decided to question their investigation, it would only return to the previous situation and wouldn't get worse. The main concern now isn't Batman, but Dean himself. Batman didn't seem to place much importance on the Phantom Thief, who was more like an artful thief than a supervillain. This doesn't mean that Batman completely ignores him, but in Batman's mind, there's a scale, and the weight of the Phantom Thief isn't big enough. Batman needs to deal with other more dangerous criminals first before coming back to deal with the Phantom Thief. Of course, if Robin or Batgirl, the younger heroes, want to train with the Phantom Thief, that's okay. It's just that Batman can't let them face those highly dangerous supervillains alone without worrying about them. However, Batman is quite dissatisfied with the results of Robin facing off against the Phantom Thief and losing multiple times. To Batman, this doesn't prove how tough the Phantom Thief is but rather shows Robin is not doing enough. It shows that Robin still hasn't matured as much as Batgirl, who at least understands the importance of investigating murder cases over catching thieves. This is the real reason why Batman is not happy with Robin after returning. In other words, as long as Dean doesn't do anything stupid and doesn't go out of his way to confront Batman, there is currently no risk of his identity being exposed. It's important to have a balance here. Dean can't appear too perfect with no trace of suspicion, as that would be the most suspicious thing. But he also can't have suspicions all over him, as that would only lead to revealing his true identity. There needs to be some suspicious stuff, but it can't be absolute. It should be something that most people have in common. This is the true test that Dean will face next, but luckily, he has dealt with similar situations before. Chapter 120, Chapter 120, Partner of Justice. You can't break a man the way you break a dog or a horse. The harder you beat a man, the taller he stands. Jackal, Far Cry 2. Originally, I came to the hospital with the intention of asking about the bat monster. After all, Barbara's sudden injury coincided with the time when the legend of the bat monster began to spread. Watching the Batmobile fade into the distance, Dean stood on the rooftop lost in thought. But it turned out that both Batman and Dick were at the hospital. This made it difficult for Dean to ask Barbara about this information. After all, Barbara wasn't aware that Dean knew his identity as a Batgirl, and Dean couldn't possibly ask if Barbara had been to the Upper West District, where the Bat monster was rumored to appear. Naturally, there's no reason to ask Barbara about these things, even if he were pretending that he was only interested in urban legends and wanted to share this story with others, it would be too hard to believe. Besides, Dick knew Dean wasn't that kind of person. Perhaps Dean's deep interest in the Bat monster legend seemed strange, as it had nothing to do with him. He was the Phantom Thief, and the possibility of him conflicting with these monsters wasn't very high. So, why should he care so much? Oh, thinking like that would be wrong. Dean lived in an incredibly dangerous and bizarre world where the two most important and main elements were superheroes and supervillains. Everything else, including people, things, and even thoughts, were just small side characters. There's no way around it, this is the harsh reality of the fictional world, and there's nothing anyone or anything can change about it. If Dean didn't have enough knowledge about the supervillains, then it would definitely be a bad situation for him. While he might not have any reasons to confront most supervillains, it doesn't mean that supervillains wouldn't hire someone like him. After years of madness in Gotham, Penguin, as the underground kingpin, still stood strong. His reign over the underworld was on the brink of surpassing Falcone's. Did you really think he relied only on ordinary gangsters and bribing the government? Don't be naive, it's not the old days when Falcone was in charge. Now it's a world of superheroes and supervillains. Among the many heads serving under the Penguin, there are several extraordinary individuals like the Imperceptible Man, the Hypnotic, Mr. Toxic, and Mr. Combustible. Although Penguin himself doesn't have superpowers, he is good at recruiting and managing these people and make them work for him. That's what makes Penguin so terrifying. Many people think that Gotham doesn't have many superpowered individuals, and Dean also thought so when he first came here. Later, he found out that there are actually quite a few superpowered individuals here. Still, compared to cities like Coast City or Central City, the level of their abilities wasn't that strong. Their impact on the overall population of Gotham is relatively weak. In short, since Dean couldn't change the fact that he lived in a messed up world, he had to accept it. Just as a certain savior once said, when you can't change the limitations of things, the only thing you can change is yourself. Dean has been in Gotham for many years and has never missed even a single report on supervillains because it is closely related to his life. In fact, every Gothamite is quite similar because their lives are deeply connected. Now that Gotham seems to have a human resembling a bat, how could Dean not be concerned? And this time, he wants to try to get information directly instead of waiting for news reports. This is because no one can be sure that the news reports will be detailed enough. However, on the other side, since Bruce and Dick both appeared at the hospital, it's 100% sure that the Bat monster is real. Dean thought to himself. Now that it's night, it should be time for Batman and Robin to investigate, but they appeared in the Gotham General Hospital. Why? Besides coming to find Barbara to learn more details about the Bat monster, I can't think of any other reason. Dean continued to think. Just now, the direction of the Batmobile was indeed towards the Upper West Side. It's likely they were going to find the Bat monster. Dean concluded. The Batmobile's speed far exceeded that of a normal car, and it was impossible for Dean to catch up with his glider wings. However, he didn't need to chase the Batmobile and shouldn't have. Dean didn't believe that Batman's anti-surveillance could detect that someone was following him. If he wanted to get information about the Bat monster, he had to take a different strategy. So, Dean took out his fake Batman suit and put it on. Tonight, he will play the role of a fanatical young man imitating Batman. He wanted to be a partner in justice. After a while, in the Upper West Side. Due to the recent shocking stories about the Bat monster murder incidents, no one dared to go out at night here, although there were only a few brave people who dared to do so in the first place. This quiet and deserted road is perfect for the Batmobile to drive on. Suddenly, a sleek vehicle whizzed past the street, and the noise it made lasted for a long time before it disappeared. Batman dares to drive like this not because he's rich and not afraid of accidents but because the braking ability of the Batmobile surpasses what normal technology can achieve. Even when driving at full speed, it can come to a sudden stop in fractions of a second. Of course, this would result in the Batmobile flipping over 100% of the time, but the unique features of the Batmobile allow Batman to control the direction of the flip to ensure that no one gets hurt. As for situations where there are people all around, is there a possibility that, in such situations, Batman wouldn't drive so fast or use a different mode of transportation? Squeak! The Batmobile stopped in front of a forest. This is the boundary between the Upper West Side and Robinson Park, and it's also the first crime scene for the Bat monster murder cases. The first corpse with an unusual cause of death was discovered around this area. Robinson Park is a large forest park located between the Upper West Side and the East Side, almost the size of a whole district. The Finger River, which is the longest river in Gotham, flows through Robinson Park. The biggest pond in the city is also in the middle of the park. Batman and Robin arrived at the initial crime scene, and there was no one else there, only a police cordon. The body here has been sent to the GCPD morgue. Otherwise, we might have been able to gather more information. In the woods, Robin looked at a tree with dozens of strange claw marks. Batman, do you think these marks on the tree could have been caused by the Bat monster? Chapter 121, Chapter 121, Wedding Ring. The loneliest people are the kindest. The saddest people smile the brightest. The most damaged people are the wisest. All because they don't wish to see anyone else suffer the way they did. Jalal Fernandez, Fairy Tale. On a sturdy tree trunk, there are clear, narrow claw marks visible. The depth of each mark exceeded 10 centimeters, which is extremely rare for animals in nature to leave such deep claw marks on a tree trunk. Even among many large predators, only a few powerful animals can do it. However, in a developed city like Gotham, it is almost impossible for large predators like this to exist. Without a doubt, the marks on the tree trunk were left by the legendary Bat monster. There are many nearby trees with similar marks, at least 4 or 5 trees can be seen nearby at a glance, and it is difficult to say whether there are even more similar trees deeper in the forest. There is no remaining blood on the claw marks, and the distance between each mark is relatively close together. It doesn't seem like these marks were accidentally left while attacking humans and accidentally grabbing onto the tree trunk. Instead, it's more like, Robin said while holding his chin in one hand. Just like venting. Batman's voice came from the side. Yes, just like when a person experiences strong violent desires in their emotions, the bat monster has obviously gone crazy digging trees here. Maybe killing people triggered some sort of emotion in it, excitement? Or perhaps it wasn't satisfied. As Robin spoke, he turned to look at Batman. Batman was crouching on the ground, gently brushing aside some soil and tree branches. His eyes were slightly narrowed. What's wrong? Did you find something new? Robin asked as he walked over. The forensics department of the West District Police Stations needs to improve their crime scene investigation skills. Batman picked up a broken ring-shaped object from the ground, emotionless as he spoke. He wiped off the dirt from the surface, and the ring regained its shine. A silver ring with a diamond the size of a grain of rice embedded in it. It was definitely a diamond ring. And judging by how it looked and what it was made of, it was probably a wedding ring. Why would a wedding ring appear in a forest where a murder incident happened not too long ago? Who left it? Was it an unlucky or foolish person? Or the deceased? Or someone else altogether? And why is the ring broken? These questions cannot be answered for now, but one thing is sure, this ring was just recently dropped here. The reason was simple. The ring was not buried very deeply and was only covered by a little bit of soil and leaves. It could have been found with a little bit of observation. The number of homeless people lurking around Robinson Park is high, so if this ring had been there for a while, Batman wouldn't have been able to find it now. Batman slightly narrowed his eyes, pressing a few times on the wrist guard on his left hand. The guard opened it automatically, revealing a strange container inside. He put the ring inside, and the open wrist guard automatically closed. Then, a green light scanned across the ring, uploading its data to the Bat computer located in the Bat Cave and automatically making a virtual model of the ring. The data model included not only the appearance and brand information of the ring but also the fingerprints left on the ring. Meanwhile, Alfred was sitting in front of the Bat computer, waiting for news from Batman and Robin. When the data from the ring was uploaded to the Bat computer, Alfred instantly became alert. Penny 1, investigate the owner of this diamond ring. Batman contacted Alfred. Just like Dick's codename was Robin and Batman's codename was Bruce, Alfred also had his own codename Penny 1. When Batman was on a mission, he would call Alfred a Penny 1. Very well, Master Bruce. I'm glad to see you finally taking an interest in wedding rings, but considering the Wayne family's wealth, isn't the diamond on this ring a bit too small? Alfred easily operated the Bat computer and compared the fingerprint on the ring with the fingerprint database while humorously commenting. As for why the Bat computer's database contains the fingerprint identity information of all the citizens of Gotham, we don't know, and we dare not ask. Soon, the results came out, and Alfred reported, I found a sample that matches the fingerprint on the ring, but there's something strange. What's strange about it? Robin's communication channel was connected to Batman and Alfred, so he could hear Alfred's words in real time and ask. The owner of the fingerprint sample is named Kirk Langstrom, a somewhat famous zoologist. It is said that his main research subject is bats. He got married a few years ago, so it's normal for him to wear a wedding ring, and the fingerprint matches, so he is definitely the owner of this ring. Alfred explained, however, the strange part is that I've gathered all the surveillance records near Robinson Park, and Dr. Langstrom hasn't been there in the past month. Interesting. If the ring belongs to Dr. Langstrom and he hasn't been here, then what's the story behind the ring we found? Robin raised an eyebrow. Could it be that the Bat monster also attacked Dr. Langstrom? But why would the Bat monster need a diamond ring, and why did it throw it away? It's not like it could bite off the ring to taste it and then find out it doesn't taste good, so it threw it aside. "Come here, Robin." At that moment, Batman's voice came from a distance. He had arrived near the Batmobile without noticing, opened the car door, and entered without looking back as he shouted. Robin reluctantly followed and sat in the passenger seat. "Now, we're going to find Kirk Langstrom." Batman quickly started the Batmobile's engine and spoke in a serious tone. Robin nodded to show that he understood. "I've met Dr. Langstrom. He lost his hearing due to a past illness. In order to restore his hearing, he started researching bats, believing that their advanced hearing abilities could help him." Batman explained as he drove. "Kirk has been trying to mix bat DNA into human DNA to create a serum that can treat deafness. A year ago, he came to Wayne Enterprises to meet me, hoping that Wayne Enterprises would fund his research. He stated that once he succeeded, there would be no more deaf people in the world. However, I turned him down. I advised him to explore a different research direction, and since then, I have lost contact with him. Perhaps he's still pursuing his serum research." At this, Robin asked with a disbelief expression, "Wait, are you saying that Kirk Langstrom created a bat serum that didn't cure his deafness but turned him into a bat monster?" Chapter 122, Chapter 122, Imprisoned Wife. The thing about happiness is you only know you had it when it's gone. I mean, you may think to yourself that you're happy, but you don't really believe it. You focus on the petty bullshit, or the next job, or whatever. It's only looking back, by comparison with what comes after, that you really understand that's what happiness felt like. Kellogg, Fallout 4. "This is just too crazy!" Robin exclaimed with shock. "Even in Gotham, this is somewhat unbelievable. A serum that can change human DNA into bat-like creatures? I'd rather believe it was created in LexCorp's chemical lab." "Then how do you explain Kirk's ring being left behind in Robinson Park?" Batman retorted. "Why is the ring broken?" Upon hearing this, Robin's mind was instantly struck by lightning. A normal person wouldn't just randomly break a ring, and breaking a ring might even be more difficult than breaking a diamond. After all, diamonds were incredibly hard but also weak. But if Kirk Langstrom had drank the serum and turned into a bat monster, his body would have grown larger. The diamond ring that used to fit perfectly would suddenly become too small. It might even burst from his swollen finger. Continuing to think about it, perhaps Kurt, who had physically transformed into a monster, still had some human emotions remaining. He still loved his wife, so even though the ring was broken, he kept it with him until he accidentally dropped it in the woods when he killed someone for the first time. All the claw marks the bat monster left on the trees could mean that he was really sad that he couldn't control his bloodthirsty instincts instead of just being excited or angry. Hiss! Robin had to admit that following this logic, it was much more likely that Kirk Langstrom would make the serum, but the side effect is that he would turn him into the bat monster. He was now the prime suspect. Until we meet Langstrom, everything is still just speculation. The bat monster could be him, or it could be someone else. Batman spoke slowly, with a tone that never changed, and was always very calm. Shortly after Batman and Robin left, another shadow quietly approached the woods. At first glance, this shadow was actually wearing a batsuit. But upon closer inspection, it became clear that the batsuit was a bit temporary and that the person wearing it wasn't as muscular as the real Batman. I knew they would definitely come to the crime scene. Dean's face showed the expression I knew it as he looked at one of the big trees in the area and thought with a hint of regret. Too bad, the mini bug can't be retrieved. I can only activate its self-destruct mode. A mini bug listening device, it was impossible to see it, especially with a magnifying glass. What exactly is going on? Let's go back a few hours ago. After leaving Gotham General Hospital, Dean saw Batman and Robin driving the Batmobile towards the Upper West Side. The Batmobile was too fast, and Dean knew he would lose them if he just followed behind for even a minute. But Dean was sure that Batman and Robin would come to the crime scene to investigate the Bat monster, no matter what. They always went to every crime scene. So he looked into the location of each Bat monster attack and found that the two closest crime scenes to Gotham General Hospital were located in the harbor area and the suburban area of the Upper West Side. These areas were more open and had fewer people. The first body was found in Robinson Park, which was actually farther from Gotham General Hospital. In order to speed up the investigation, Batman would most likely prioritize the closer locations. This allowed Dean to arrive at Robinson Park before Batman and Robin. Besides, there was no such thing as a peaceful night in Gotham. Dean didn't know how many robbers or even murderers he would encounter on the way to the Upper West Side. These encounters could delay Batman. In short, Dean managed to arrive at Robinson Park before Batman did. He did notice the existence of the ring, but he didn't touch it. Instead, he hid the mini-bug he bought from the system on a large tree. His only goal was to eavesdrop on the details of Batman and Robin's investigation. Of course, there was a possibility that Batman might find out where the Bat monster was at another crime scene and go straight to confront it directly. In that case, he wouldn't come to Robinson Park. At that point, Dean would just have to accept his bad luck. There was nothing he could do. He couldn't risk directly confronting Batman and waiting for luck to strike in another place. Although he had thought about what excuse to use in such a situation, it would be best not to use it if possible. He would use them only if absolutely necessary. Kirk Langstrom. Dean rubbed his chin and realized he had no impression of this name at all. Fortunately, Dr. Langstrom had a reputation in the field of zoology, and a lot of public information could be easily found online. An expert in zoology with physical disabilities is seeking funding to find a way to cure his hearing by researching animal DNA. He was rejected by major corporations. Something doesn't seem right with this background. As the saying goes, the more you look, the more you're surprised. After Dean finished reading Dr. Langstrom's public information, he immediately felt that something was off. This is the usual storyline for a villain turning towards the dark side in a superhero story. It doesn't seem like Dr. Kirk Langstrom's address is available online, but the location of his laboratory is. After some thought, Dean left the scene. After some time, in the northeast of the Upper West Side, this was the poorest area of the entire Upper West District. It was almost like the Gotham slums in the East End. Of course, compared to the slums in the East End, the living environment was still much better here. Batman and Robin came to a small house that looked like a warehouse from the outside but had no lights on and tightly closed windows. There was no noise coming from inside, and it was unclear if anyone was home. "This is Dr. Langstrom's home? I didn't expect a famous expert to live in this place." Robin said it with pity as he looked at the broken-down house in front of him. His life used to be quite comfortable, but his stubborn research work consumed all of his savings. Nobody was willing to fund his serum, so he had to invest all of his money in the research himself. Batman explained. He checked the house and found that it was the only entrance that he could use to get inside. Batman first knocked on the door, but there was no response. So he gave Robin a signal, and Robin immediately followed Batman's lead, alert and on guard. Batman stood at the door, lifted his shoulder, tensed his muscles, and then charged the door. Bang! Batman was able to quickly open the old door and see what was going on inside. It was empty inside, with no furniture except for a large cage and a woman locked inside. Judging by the woman's appearance, she was clearly Dr. Kirk Langstrom's wife, Francine Langstrom. Chapter 123, Chapter 123, Man-Bat. Do you always want to live hiding behind the mask you put up for the sake of others? You're you, and there's nothing wrong with that. Emer, Attack on Titan. In a large iron cage, Francine Langstrom looked exhausted with no visible injuries. She had been sitting on the ground in a daze. When Batman burst through the door, the loud noise startled Francine. She quickly stood up from the ground and grabbed onto the iron bars of the cage, looking towards the door with a mixture of fear and pity in her eyes. But when she saw Batman and Robin's faces, a sense of relief washed over her. "Are you okay, Mrs. Langstrom?" Robin asked with concern, looking at Francine trapped in the cage. He approached and expertly picked the lock of the cage. "Thank you." Francine spoke gratefully as she walked out of the cage. "Where is your husband, Kirk Langstrom? Did he lock you up here?" Batman asked as he approached. "You're here to arrest Kirk, right? Well, I guess it makes sense. His current state must have drawn attention." Francine replied after a moment of silence. With these words, Francine practically confirmed Kirk's identity. "So, is it really Kirk Langstrom who's been attacking humans as the bat-like creature in Gotham recently?" Robin found it hard to believe, even though he had mentally prepared himself for it. It was quite critical to think that just a serum could turn a normal person into a monster, even in Gotham. The most typical mutants in Gotham currently are Poison Ivy, Clayface, Mr. Freeze, and Solomon Grundy. If we were to include the demon's head of the League of Assassins, Ra's al Ghul, then he would also be an example character. The above-mentioned people all have a common feature. Their physical mutations were rare events that were difficult to replicate. Mr. Freeze's mutation was even negative, as he needed to be in a low-temperature environment to survive, and he had no additional special abilities. As for Ra's al Ghul's extraordinary physique, it was possible to copy it through the Lazarus Pit, but he pretty much had all of that water. Only 2 or 3 top-tier people inside the entire League of Assassins had the privilege of taking a dip before their deaths, while the rest could only dream of it. However, Kirk Langstrom's serum was different. It was a carefully developed product that he had spent many years working on. He must have confirmed that it was stable enough for him to dare to use it on himself. After all, he was only deaf, not missing any limbs, and there was no company pressuring him to produce a finished product. If he ran out of funds, he could just change careers. It wasn't an extremely urgent situation. In other words, the birth of the bat monster was highly likely to be a stable event, or at the very least, a high probability event. Considering the worst-case scenario, the bat monsters might be able to be mass-produced. This is a very frightening possibility. Although I've been locked up here and cut off from the outside world, I know that my husband must have done something terrible out there. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. But I want to say." At this point, Francine hesitated a bit but ultimately continued speaking. "My husband, he's not a monster. He's just, not in his right mind. In the past few weeks, Kirk attacked 6 people, 2 dead, 3 serious injuries, and 1 minor injury." Batman said it expressionlessly. "I'm not trying to justify Kirk's actions. I just want you to know that he didn't do those things willingly." Francine sighed. "Just about a week ago, Kirk finally created that serum. I told him to be cautious when using it, but he was confident that nothing would go wrong and injected the serum directly." She began to explain the process of the birth of the bat monster to Batman and Robin. At first, the serum worked normally. His hearing impairment was indeed cured, and he was able to hear my voice for the first time since we got married. However, just when we thought everything was going to be fine, Kirk suddenly felt extremely uncomfortable. He turned into a human-sized bat-like creature, perhaps due to the influence of bat DNA. His physical traits and behaviors began to resemble those of bats, liking darkness, hanging upside down on the ceiling, and having an uncontrollable bloodlust. Francine spoke with a distressed expression. "Sometimes he is very sober, sometimes he falls into an insane rage, destroying things out of control. There isn't even a single piece of furniture left here because Kirk destroyed everything. During his madness, he calls himself Man-Bat." Man-Bat? That sounds like the reverse of Batman. Robin muttered the name quietly to himself and glanced at Batman. "Kirk locked me up in this cage to prevent me from getting hurt when he lost control." Francine continued. I see, he's been struggling between his humanity and his animal instincts. No wonder there are so many claw marks in Robinson Park's woods. Those could be Kirk releasing his bloodlust. Perhaps he was seen in a wild state and attacked someone for the first time. Robin rubbed his chin as he spoke. After killing someone, Kirk's animal instincts consumed his humanity. It got harder for him to control himself, and he started attacking people more often. Batman interjected. Mrs. Langstrom, do you know where your husband's serum is? Is there any related research material here? No, there's nothing left here. Everything was moved to his lab. The location of the lab is... Flap. Flap. Just as Francine was about to reveal the location of the laboratory, the sound of flapping wings suddenly came from outside the house. Oh no, Kirk's back. Francine's face paled, and she instinctively turned to Batman and Robin. You need to leave quickly, or it will be dangerous later. Before she could finish her sentence, she stopped herself because she realized that the two people in front of her were vigilantes. Don't worry, if your husband goes crazy, we'll handle him. Don't forget, we are the dynamic duo of Gotham. Robin patted his chest and smiled confidently. Robin. At this moment, Batman whispered. Robin immediately adjusted his expression and followed Batman outside. As they walked halfway, a huge dark figure with wings walked in, carrying a bag in his hand. Francine, I brought dinner. It's your favorite cheese pizza. I was going to pay, but you know it's not good for me to go inside and order. Why is the door broken? Slam. The pizza fell to the ground. Why are you two in my house? Looking at the two unexpected visitors in his home, Kirk Langstrom's expression turned from surprise to anger. Chapter 124, Chapter 124, Influence. You'll have bad times, but it'll always wake you up to the good stuff you weren't paying attention to. Sean McGuire, Good Will Hunting. Relax, Kirk. We don't mean you any harm, we just want to talk to you. Batman immediately tried to reassure Kirk. Talk? There's nothing for me to talk about with you, Batman. Kirk responded coldly. Now get out of my home. No, Kirk, you can't continue like this any longer. Maybe they can help you. At this moment, Francine stepped forward and tried to persuade Kirk. Francine? How did you get out of the cage? Go back in. It's dangerous. I don't know when I won't be able to control myself again. Seeing Francine, Kirk became anxious immediately. No. I can hide in the cage to avoid hurting myself, but what about others? Francine firmly shook her head. What are you saying? Kirk's expression changed. You killed someone. Even if it wasn't your true intention, you can't stay away from all of this, Kirk. Francine covered her face and sobbed, choked up. You used to be a good person, Kirk. But now, how many people have been hurt because of you? How many people are trapped in endless fear because of you? This is a mistake, things shouldn't be like this. Kirk, you have to face your mistakes. So you already know, Batman told you. Kirk's expression became complicated. Kirk, I can help you develop the serum that turns you into the Man-Bat and help you regain your normal self. You shouldn't give up your humanity. Batman extended his hand to Francine, displaying goodwill. I need a sample of the serum and as much detailed research data as possible. We can go to your lab now. Before Batman could finish his sentence, Kirk forcefully interrupted him. You want my research? Is that your real purpose? Kirk's face suddenly changed expression, and a strong sense of ruthlessness and violence forcefully arose inside him. It seems like there's a voice constantly ringing in his ears. You killed someone, there's no turning back now. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison. Is that what you want? Your talent shouldn't be wasted in a dark and hopeless jail cell. Batman deceived Francine. Why would he help you? He's clearly jealous of the power you have now, and remember the feeling of freedom. You've transcended humanity. You're different from them. They fear you, they're scared of you, they envy you, they want to kill you. Kill them, kill them, kill them. Robin, be careful. Kirk's not acting right. Seeing Kirk suddenly become lost in muttered words after he asks a question, Batman immediately becomes wary and warns Robin. Yes, I've noticed too. Robin's expression turns serious. It's starting again. Before he enters a frenzied state, he always mutters like this, as if he's talking to someone. Francine looks scared. Mrs. Langstrom, it's safer for you to go back to your cage for now. Robin advised Francine. There might be some fight between us and your husband. Francine opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but in the end, she didn't speak. She quietly followed Robin's advice and returned to her cage. She knew she couldn't help, whether it was for Batman and Robin or for Kirk. You don't understand at all. I never needed any help. Out of nowhere, Kirk spoke slowly. The serum has fixed my flaws and granted me power. My physical abilities now surpass those of all humans. I can freely fly in the sky, unlike you, Batman, who can't even fly. I've lived for decades and never felt the joy of the body and mind I have right now. The serum has made me see through everything in this world. I have evolved into a species above humans. I will never hand over the serum to anyone. Robin had a feeling that Kirk's fur seemed to have become thicker, resembling the bodies of bats. Control yourself, Kirk. These thoughts aren't your thoughts. It's the serum that's causing you to think like this. Batman faced Kirk sternly, at the same time raising his hands and inching closer to him. Robin noticed Batman's actions and instantly understood. He approached Kirk from the other side. Think about Francine, think about yourself. What is it that you truly want deep down? Upon hearing these words, Kirk paused for a moment. At that moment, Batman and Robin suddenly attacked Kirk, throwing several batarangs and birdarangs at him. Kirk quickly regained his senses and used his wings to block the batarangs. However, the sharp batarangs left several wounds on Kirk's wings. Ah! In pain, Kirk couldn't help but cry out. After throwing the batarangs, Batman swiftly approached Kirk with a syringe-like object in his hand filled with some kind of liquid and injected the liquid into Kirk's body. In an instant, the liquid from the syringe entered Kirk's body. What is that? What have you done to me? Injected with an unknown substance, Kirk suddenly felt dizziness in his brain, completely consumed in rage. With red eyes, he spread his wings wide, using a powerful force to push Batman away. Kirk wasn't bragging before. After transforming into a human bat, his strength far exceeded the limits of a human. This force was so strong that even Batman could only push back. Flap, flap. Kirk, or rather, the man-bat, started flapping its wings behind it, making it float in the air and sway as it flew outside. Batman! Seeing Batman being pushed back, Robin shouted worriedly. He saw Batman's face fill with anger as he took out a grapple gun from his waist and chased after the man-bat outside. Watching the man-bat fly up and down in the sky, Robin didn't waste any time before firing his grappling gun at nearby buildings and chasing the man-bat fiercely. Meanwhile, Batman had regained his balance and caught up to Robin in no time. I just injected him with a sedative, using a normal dosage similar to Killer Croc. Batman said it in a deep voice. The dosage for Killer Croc? That's enough to immediately knock out even 4 elephants, and he can still fly. Hearing Batman's words, Robin was astonished. Look at the direction he's flying. He's probably heading back to the lab. Batman said as he looked up ahead. Meanwhile, inside Kirk Langstrom's lab, a shadowy figure sneaked in sneakily. Chapter 125, Chapter 125, The Reverse Man-Bat Inhibitor. I'll slap you so hard, you'll end up in the Ming Dynasty. James Carter, Rush Hour 2. Kirk's laboratory was quite similar to his home, both were quite basic and lacked the high-tech equipment that one would expect from advanced technology. There aren't even any surveillance cameras installed in the lab. Inside the lab, there are about a dozen tables, 2 of which have computers and monitors, while the rest are filled with all kinds of strange and colorful liquids and test tubes, as well as microscopes and more. Around the tables, there are several large blackboards covered in written letters and symbols. It's strange because Dean recognizes every word, but when they are arranged like this, he can't understand them at all. In the corner of the lab, there are dozens of square cages piled on top of each other, but more than half of them are empty, while the remaining cages are filled with bats. It's not hard to imagine that these are the sources of bat DNA samples used in Kirk's serum research. The whole lab looks like a typical biochemical lab seen in movies. Dean enters the lab and cautiously looks around. No one's inside. It seems Batman and Robin went to Kirk Langstrom's house first. After confirming that there is no one else in the lab except for himself, Dean breathes a sigh of relief. Not long ago, he heard the information that the Bat monster is most likely Kirk Langstrom in Robinson Park. Since Dean didn't have Kirk's address, he came to the public location of the lab. The reason why Kirk would reveal the location of his lab is almost understandable when anyone sees the environment inside. Poor. Researching DNA serum is not a quick process. It needs a lot of expensive resources, and Kirk's savings alone are not enough. Just the rent for the lab in the past few years has already consumed most of his budget. Naturally, Kirk wanted to attract investors for himself, so he made the location of the lab and early research results public. Unfortunately, so far, no company has been willing to invest in Kirk's project. Dean walks around the lab, exploring the strange and unknown test tube solutions on the table. What's this? Suddenly, Dean notices 3 special test tubes standing on the central table, one of which is already empty, while the other 2 are filled with 3/4 of a sticky, bright red liquid. It looks like some kind of animal blood. There's a note attached to the test tube saying, Man-Bat DNA Hybrid Serum. Man-Bat Serum, could this be what turned Kirk Langstrom into a monster? Dean thought to himself. Just then, a voice from the system interrupted Dean's thoughts. The system has detected a special liquid that can alter DNA. You can choose to have the system absorb a sample, and a new reward called Reverse Man-Bat Inhibitor will be generated in the store. Reverse Man-Bat Inhibitor can suppress the effects caused by the Man-Bat serum, allowing individuals whose DNA has been altered by the serum to return to normal. Note, however, this effect is not permanent. If the individual injects the Man-Bat serum again, their DNA will be altered again. Value, 500 amazement points. Dean was stunned for a moment by this unexpected system notification. What was going on? He could exchange the serum with the system and get his hands on the reverse Man-Bat inhibitor in the store. Dean hadn't expected that the system had an absorption function. He quickly thought about the pros and cons of the situation. The most recent supervillain to appear in Gotham was the huge Man-Bat, whose real identity was Kirk Langstrom, a genetically mutated scientist. As of now, Dean only knew that Kirk had gained the abilities of flight, super strength, and the ability to emit and receive ultrasonic waves. He didn't know what kind of person Kirk was. He didn't know if he was like Two-Face, who turned evil after a terrible accident, or like Penguin, who always wanted to do horrible things, or like Killer Croc, who had chosen a dark path because human society did not accept his appearance. Regardless of his personality, in Gotham, where danger lurked at every corner, there was always a possibility of encountering someone like him. The important point was that Kirk was different from the other villains Dean knew. He was a completely new villain who had never appeared before, and Dean knew nothing about him. Most of the other villains, like Two-Face, Riddler, Mad Hatter, Penguin, Scarecrow, Mr. Freeze, and Ventriloquist, have either retired from Arkham Asylum or are enjoying their time in Blackgate Penitentiary. Only a few supervillains and Penguin are still active outside. The information about these villains in Gotham is publicly available, so every resident knows their strengths, weaknesses, and secrets. That was why Dean had decided to investigate Kirk in order to have an advantage in case he ever came across him. Dean is no exception. Dean needed to gather as much information as possible about Kirk Langstrom to prepare for the worst. Before Dean took on the identity of the Phantom Thief, he didn't have enough abilities in different aspects. He could only rely on media reports to gather information about supervillains. However, the information he got this way was not very detailed and was more basic. Now the situation was different. Dean is now considered a super criminal, so he can't just rely on newspapers for information anymore. The unexpected prompt from the system didn't surprise Dean too much, given the example of the Stone of Misfortune. System: absorb a sample of the Man-Bat serum. Dean picked up a vial of the Man-Bat serum and called out to the system in his mind. Soon, the serum in the vial began to decrease little by little, as if it were being sucked away by something invisible. Quickly, the vial that previously held the red liquid turned transparent. Absorption of Man-Bat serum complete. Generating reverse Man-Bat inhibitor. Estimated time for completion, 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Thump. Thump. At that moment, Dean's ears twitched as he faintly heard the sound of wings flapping coming from outside the laboratory. He quickly looked around the lab and silently left the spot. Crash. 10 seconds later, the laboratory door was violently broken down. A massive humanoid bat monster burst in and immediately headed for a messy table with unknown chemicals. For some reason, the way it flew was unsteady, as if it were drunk. Naloxone. I remember naloxone should be here. The Man-Bat frantically searched the table, its dizziness growing stronger. Thunk. Suddenly, a sharp pain hit the back of Man-Bat's head.